All right, would you please stand? Welcome to this ordinary meeting of Hunters Hill Council number 4452. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet tonight and the waters that surround us, and pay my respect to their elders past and present.
We thank you, Lord, for the honour of being called by our fellow residents to this office of honour and trust. Give us grace diligently and honourably, free from private interest or prejudice, to discharge the duties entrusted to us to the common good and in your sight, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Please have a seat. I think we have everybody here this evening. I don't think we've got any apologies tonight. TWT, welcome. I was about to make an apology for you. Are there any declarations of interest? Confirmation of the minutes of the last meeting. Moved Councillor Williams, seconded Councillor Miles. Councillor, is there anything arising from those minutes that we need to... Any amendments to the minutes? That's what I'm looking for. Councillor Williams.
Yes, Mr Mayor. Relates to item 368/18. On page 4. It says that on the resolution of a motion of Councillor Miles and seconded Councillor Sanderson, I believe that's incorrect. The original
369.
Sorry?
369, not 368.
Oh, whatever. So my understanding of the way the procedure works is that if the mover and seconder accept an amendment, then the original motion is maintained, and that has appeared several times in the discussion of that item. But when we get to the actual resolution, it changes from Councillor Sanderson to Councillor Miles. And I don't think that's accurate or correct.
No, thank you. We'll make that amendment. Any further comments on the minutes of last meeting? Councillor Williams.
Yes, Mr Mayor. Again, relating to that item, I believe the vote should be recorded in relation to that item, and I understood Councillor Miles and Councillor Collins wanted their names in dissent, so I'm not quite sure why we don't have a voting block there.
Is that your recollection, Councillor Miles?
I don't think we wanted our names in dissent. I think that you asked for it to be recorded, but it wasn't that you couldn't call. You could only call for a division. You can only call for a division because you didn't ask for names to be recorded before under the Act.
So I think I do record you asking that names were recorded, so we'll make that amendment. Thank you.
Thank you.
And of course, if anyone wants to watch the live stream, they'll be able to see it on the recording how we vote. So.
Yep. Thank you, Councillor Collins. Any other matters arising from minutes? Any business arising from those minutes? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you.
On a point of order, may we bring forward item 5.1, which I think is the Save Hunters Hill Day motion?
What about the Prince Edward?
Yeah, probably start off at the top of the list.
We have a couple that will probably...
Yes, could we bring forward 4.4 and 5.1?
We can. Seconder, Councillor Sanderson.
Well, before we do that, I wonder whether we do the whole lot. So we'll move forward item 4.4, 5.1, 5.2, 8.1 and 8.3, will each of which we have speakers for, in that order.
All right. Prince Edward, Hunters Hill Day, Bedlam Bay, the sale of an unmanned road on Point Road, and the Property Committee nominations. Is that correct?
That's right.
So, councillors, do you have a seconder for that? Councillor Crassley. Councillors, anybody against that? Those in favour? Against? It's carried. Thank you. Thank you, councillor. So we'll start with item 4.4. And we do have a speaker. We have a couple of speakers for 4.4. Mr. Coote.
Good evening, everyone. Mr. Mayor, councillors, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. And on behalf of residents of Prince Edward Street, I'd also just like to again thank you for actually listening to what we had to say about the issues that we have in our street, and it being a major access point for a great swathe of Hunters Hill. And we really appreciate you doing the work on getting up and putting the money down to get an independent traffic report. So thank you, appreciate that. I think there are some issues there in the traffic report, and I don't want to go line by line, but some of the number counts don't seem to correlate correctly. There's some issues also about where the actual traffic counts were placed. That's okay. The main recommendation is that the people of Isla Street, Sunnyside Street and Hillcrest Avenue are fairly dependent on right turn off Victoria Road northbound in Prince Edward Street to get home. We understand that. Perhaps, and one of the gists of the report seemed to be that the actual speed humps have made a significant reduction in the traffic. Well, that's great, because previously it wasn't just the volume of traffic, it was also the speed. So we're getting there. I think there's room for improvement, and if councillors take away from tonight that they're going to go with the recommendation of the report, which is to leave the street open, I think we need to revisit some other alternative ideas. Residents and I had a bit of a discussion. We haven't had much time to canvass it through the whole street, but I think there are some other alternatives, such as a raised threshold wombat crossing at the entry to the street from Manning Road with local traffic only signage, which might also improve a reduction in the volume of traffic coming through our street. I won't take up too much time, but there's obvious, out of the traffic report, a glaring problem, and that is Tarban Street. Tarban Street at the moment takes a high volume of traffic. If we close our street, it would take more traffic. The street has traffic, it's curved on one side only, the other side of the road it's very narrow, and there's traffic poles along the side of the street as well. I think whatever happens, Tarban Street is something that we probably as a council have to focus some attention on. We can look at alternatives. I still think that it would be great to close the street. I think it would be great to request for assistance with lobbying with RMS to look at alternatives to the Victoria Road, Manning Road intersection, which is a dangerous intersection. There have been, and there often are, accidents occurring at that intersection. That's something else. So thank you, appreciate the time and appreciate the work.
Thank you. Just stay with us for a moment. Questions? I think we have Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Gully. The current speed is 50 in
on the basis that all local streets is a 50k limit. There's no signage though identifying any speed limit, and there's a lack of signage, like the local traffic only. If there was something like that, and as I say, some obvious raised threshold at the entry to the street, perhaps that would again improve some of that volume.
So local traffic only, 40k, that kind of.
That would be a help. Oh, and sorry, one last thing, and I hate to bring this up, but the street, the pavement's really delaminated and needs to be put on the works program. Sorry to raise that, but it's in a bad state.
Thanks for that.
Thanks.
Councillor Miles, did you have a question?
I was just going to ask, Gully, given you're saying that you don't think that some of the data in this report is accurate.
Yeah.
Maybe you could elaborate on that a little bit.
Sure, okay. I didn't pick up the particular pages, but if you look at the traffic volumes coming down Isla Street, turning in a northerly direction, combined with data heading in a northerly direction already on Prince Edward Street, you'll see there's a mismatch in the numbers. The total sum equals 80, but it's reported at 70. They're those sort of data I'd say it's just a arithmetic miscalculation. But if you know, and I didn't spend too much time on it, but I presume that there'd be probably a few others. They're just ones that stood out. Yeah.
Councillor Sass.
A couple of things you said about the, I think the location of the sensors. Was your concern that they're too close to the speed hump, so therefore the traffic will be artificially slowed where they were actually, where their speed was actually?
Yeah, absolutely. And so that was one of the, I mean, it did show the reduction, but if you put a sensor right on the back of a speed hump, well, most of the people would be slowing. It's a bit of a worry about that upper percentile, the 85th percentile, because that's still going at like 56 k's over a speed hump. And we hear that a lot. Speed humps are great. We do get complaints from people that people, you know, launch over the top of them. And that's proven out, I think, in the location of the actual counter to the traffic calming device.
Councillor Miles.
Gully, just one more. The traffic impact into Hillcrest and Sunnyside for residents trying to get presumably into those streets, then would have to use Tarban Street. Do you have any ideas there that may alleviate that issue, other than the residents only?
Well, look, really, I think ultimately that intersection on Victoria Road and Manning Road is dangerous. Ultimately, that not being signalised, and I don't think it's the right intersection to signalise, that will probably end up having to be shut. The amount of accidents that occur at that intersection on a regular basis would suggest that it's not safe. Once it's shut, the question then goes, how are those people going to get home? Those people are going to come home via Manning Road, Tarban Street or Prince Edward Street from heading in a southern direction anyway, which would mean coming back up through the overpass or coming back down through Gladesville, Bateman's Road and back in. I think, you know, in light of that point, Zach, I really think that Tarban Street, there's other competing issues here, and that is if the Priory gets up and we get increase of demand down there, there is an opportunity right now for council to introduce some more off-street parking along one of the edges of Tarban Street and widen and remove the traffic poles. I think that would make a big difference, because at the moment you're getting cars parked permanently in one of the lanes, which means that it's really one lane wide there at the moment. So I do think there's something that can be done, which is improve Tarban Street, and that's an adjunct to what we were trying to do really with Prince Edward Street.
Thank you, Mr. Keith.
Thank you all, thanks.
We'd still be happy to receive your other thoughts on it, despite what the resolution is tonight. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, councillors, oh, sorry, we have a couple more. Mr. Fossahad. Welcome.
Mr. Mayor and councillors, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I'd like to congratulate council on the Priory meeting we had the other day, and at that meeting I did raise an issue which Gully hasn't really alluded to greatly, which I think is a very important issue, and that's the issue of the large number of people who reside in Glanville Court and the adjoining Department of Housing building there. There's some 230 residents, and perhaps about 300 people live in that area, and that area is isolated because of the Manning Road intersection, the Manning Road Victoria Road intersection. And the result of that is that the individuals who live, and they're mainly elderly people, quite a lot of them have walking frames and walking sticks, and I guess you're probably well aware of the type of people who live there. They're really isolated because they're unwilling to walk across that entrance. We've got a 70k speed limit down Victoria Road, which has just been introduced up further towards Gladesville Shopping Centre. If it was moved down past that Victoria Road, Manning Road intersection, then it would slow the traffic down somewhat, and that would be a benefit. But it's still a big issue, that issue of those residents in those two buildings, and the fact that they shouldn't be isolated, but they are, and they're living in an enclave that means that they can't be socially as active as they could be. So that's a big area that council and the planning, the street survey, or the discussion that we're talking about now, the report, doesn't mention the problems that those people face, and they're very serious problems. And I think that in addition to Gully's what the issues he raised, I think that we should be looking at how to alleviate that problem with those housing commission residents. I think that's about all I have to say, except that we need to again look at reopening Salter Street and perhaps putting an extra lane in Victoria Road. And that's something the state government needs to address, and it's something that perhaps council could raise with the state government, the reopening of Salter Street, which was open until fairly recently. Well, when I say fairly recently, about 30 years ago. And as far as I'm concerned, it was fairly recently because I'm a long-term resident in the area. But certainly Salter Street, the option there of reopening Salter Street, putting an extra lane on Victoria Road and putting a lane that is allocated to the right-hand turn into Salter Street needs addressing. So thank you very much, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk.
Thank you, Mr. Foster. Stay with us just for a moment. Councillor, is there any questions, Mr. Foster? Councillor Williams.
Just to follow up on the Salter Street issue, the reason they closed that is because of poor sight lines, so they're unlikely to put traffic lights where there's poor sight lines.
That's correct, and the reason why I suggested the extra lane in Victoria Road, it would overcome that problem, and of course flashing lights are an opportunity there to overcome that problem. So when people are turning to the right, the lights flash, similar to what's on I think a couple of other areas around the city. So there's I know on Victoria Road down towards Meadowbank there's flashing lights warning you of a red light ahead. So but an extra lane in Victoria Road, and it's open on the hospital side. There's an opportunity to do that without too much of a problem, and it wouldn't cost the Main Roads Department too much money to do it, I'm sure, particularly when they're spending a lot of money elsewhere.
Councillor Crossley.
Thanks for your input, Mr. Fozzer. I'm just wondering if council decided against the recommendations and decided to close Prince Edward at the top there, do you think that cars coming in from Victoria Road and zipping down to get onto Tarban Street would actually increase the risk for those people in those flats who are trying to cross to Riverglade Reserve, or to walk up to their Gladesville shops, the back route? Or do you think that
I don't think
because cars will speed up to get down there, they'll slingshot when they can't get onto Prince Edward, and that will increase the speed and noise of the traffic going past the bulk of the back of Glanville? Is that a concern for you?
Well, just an example, most of the residents in Prince Edward Street, if they're going into the city, they don't turn left at the end of Prince Edward Street, Manning Road. What they do is go down and up Tarban and up to to Salter Street and turn left there. It's much easier to merge into the traffic if you go that direction, and it's a much safer approach to Victoria Road, and you can blend in with the traffic because it's just a matter of keeping your speed lined up. And the fact is that it would take traffic actually away from that Manning Road intersection, that Prince Edward Street Manning Road intersection. So I don't think it would have an effect on the residents. And if it was blocked off completely at the end, they would be free to walk across quite safely. And it's an opportunity to widen the road there and put a bus lane in, so that the buses can actually drive off the road, off the main lane, and out of the traffic. So there's lots of opportunities to look at if we go down that track. So I recommend council look at those opportunities, and particularly bearing in mind the residents in Glanville Court and the adjoining property. It's a real important issue, and their isolation really hits home when you visit those people and talk to them, and we live amongst them in Prince Edward Street, of course, as well, and it's certainly a big issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fozat, and thanks for raising the issue of the isolation of the people in Glenville. It is an important issue, it's something we do need to think about.
Thank you.
Mr. Taylor Fick, please. Welcome.
Thank you.
Hello again.
Good evening again, Mayor and councillors. I'm going to be brief. So, Gully and Bob have already raised various issues that we all totally agree with. So, there's just a couple of things that I wanted to bring up in relation to the traffic report. I feel like the placement of that monitor was not in the right spot at all. Being too close to the speed bump, and there was only one in the street. I don't know if one really was sufficient because the last time it was done, there were two in the street. Now one towards the Gladesville Road intersection was placed there, and that monitored a lot of the traffic going down Tarleton Street and to R Street as well. So I think there should have been two. I don't know how they worked out all their models and figures with the Eastler Street intersection, because there was no monitor anywhere near that intersection. I think in a sense it's a shame that the locals could have had some input with the consultants, maybe have had a meeting, because when they talk about Googling, East Prince Edward Street a rat run or not, and Google says it's not. I mean, Blind Freddy can tell you if you live in Prince Edward Street, it is. So I don't know. I think they're typing away and kind of lost sight of that. And a bit of communication with someone from the street would have helped them. And even people standing in the street at certain times of the day or night, early night, would have seen these rat runners going in both directions. So, just further to Gully's point about the Wombat crossing, I think that's another possible option to help slow down the traffic. From the Victoria Road, Prince Edward Street intersection, and also the Manning Road. So it's any cars that go right into Manning Road, that can help slow down the traffic. It's all about slowing down the traffic and making it, safer and more pleasant for the residents. Really, I think the Eastler Street intersection, there could be something done there, and because the cars, what they do, the southbound cars, they scream around that corner, then they work up quite a speed, and then they see the first speed bump, and a lot of them go flying over it. The second one, which is closest towards Victoria Road, because it's in a dip, is actually very effective. Now that's where that monitor was placed. That's why the volumes are so low. So there you go. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Please stay with us, Councillor Sanderson.
One question, I noticed the council taken in August. Was that during school holiday time, do you know?
Look, I'm not 100% sure anymore. I actually haven't gone back to revisit that.
Can I help you with that?
Yeah, sure.
On page 52, it says, at the top, it says Manning Street as part of the traffic. Data collected in August 2018 was during the second and third weeks of the school term.
Yeah. So it was
Of the school term.
Okay. Are there any further questions of Mr. Taylor? Councillor Miles.
Nick, where would you, out of this report, and obviously the recommendation's not exactly what the residents of Prince Edward Street would like to see, what would you think would be the most appropriate course of action from tonight?
Barring the part road closure. I think the Wombat raised areas would be good, a good start, both Prince Edward Street and the Manning Road to help both streets there. I do think the Islay Street intersection could have something done there. I honestly think no right-hand turn onto Victoria Road is a no-brainer. It's like playing Russian roulette there. None of us do that. So to me, I don't know, is that a council thing or is it a state government?
It's a state government road.
It's kind of not quite on Victoria Road.
Yeah, it's our road.
It's our road, yeah. So I think, look, a few cars do that. It's crazy. But also a number of us, when we don't actually, if we're going over Gladesville Bridge going northbound, we don't actually turn right there into Prince Edward Street. We go Burns Bay Road, left into Gladesville Road, and come back into Prince Edward Street. That is by far just as quick, we believe, more pleasant and definitely safer. So that's the route we would encourage people to take. And it's not going to inconvenience Tarvin Street or anyone else.
Thank you very much.
All right, pleasure.
Councillor Cresswell, do you have a question?
No, I'd like to
Would you like to move the motion?
move the motion.
Moved. Councillor Cresswell, seconded.
I'd like to move it with an amendment.
Right, let's hear your amendment.
That we add a point 4, that council help facilitate a working party or a working group with the residents of Prince Edward Street to look at possibilities around education and traffic calming and advocacy to the state government.
And the state government, is that to do with the RTA and the turn on Victoria Road?
Well, to the RMS and to the RMS. But even if we make changes on our local roads, we still have to lobby to the RMS to do so, I believe.
No,
No, so like Bonifin Road, for example,
no, that's a police patrolling issue, not an issue to do with traffic.
wanting to change the zone in Bonifin Road had to go through the RMS.
That's because
That's because it's a police issue.
No, that's the local traffic zone which we propose the RTOs.
Work with the RMS to get it right.
Yep. Councillor Cresswell, would it include other streets as gentleman said, Isla and Manning?
With the residents of that sub-region,
That area.
Sunnyside Estate.
of the
Does that cover all
Sunnyside
of
Estate.
those streets? I would be
Hillcrest?
I would be proposing an investigate approach across all of those.
Is there anything you'd like to add to that?
So we were changing it from Prince Edward Street to the Sunnyside Estate. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Karupis, is that correct? The Sunnyside Estate takes into those streets, doesn't it?
And through you, Mayor, it's streets like Hillcrest, Sunnyside, Isla, and Tarban is that Sunnyside Estate.
Manning.
And Manning, so
No, picked it all up. Good. Right, have a seconder for that. Councillor McLaughlin. Councillor Cresswell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to thank the council for organising the traffic report and investing the money in this serious concerns of the residents of Prince Edward Street. And I'd like to thank the residents for bringing your concerns to council. All over the suburb, traffic has increased, as you would imagine, with the growing population of Sydney and Greater Sydney. So for want of a suburb-wide full traffic study, which we all dream of and hope to do down the track, and whether we chunk that down into regions, you've come to us with an immediate concern. And if we wait to do this down the track, it's going to be one of those things that never happens. I think the recommendations of the report at this stage are what I would like to accept, but for want of outcomes for the residents whose perception is still that their street isn't safe, I think there are lots of opportunities to explore. Certainly, I've just come back from Perth and I've seen some fabulous treatments on the streets over there, on the surfaces. Just visual traffic calming, not even wombat crossings, just visual things that say humans live here. And so I think the opportunity for the residents and with council facilitation to research some of those opportunities for council to be leaders in Sydney-wide in traffic calming. The traffic will always go somewhere. It will go down those streets, it'll go down Sunnyside, it will go up Tarban, it will condense up on Gladesville Road. So what we have to say to the traffic is when you're driving through our suburb, calm down. We can't reduce the numbers, it's just a thing. But I think if we work with the residents, we could get some better outcomes than what the residents feel they'll get.
All right, thank you. Anybody wishing to speak against the motion? Councillor Williams.
Yes, Mr Mayor. I think the community came to us with some genuine concerns, and I'm not happy making decisions on bad data. And I think we've already heard tonight the placement of that strip was compromised, and so therefore how can we base a decision on poor data? And I did bring council's attention to the fact that when you did your recent counts in Mary Street for the pedestrian crossing warrant, again, it was a flawed process because it was carried out when a large cohort of the senior school had left the school. So if we're going to carry out these reports and have credibility with our community, then they have to be carried out professionally and they have to be carried out accurately. And I can't see this report in its current format, based on the concerns the residents have and I have as well in terms of the placement of those counters, really allows us to make a decision on this at this point. I'm quite happy to consider alternatives, and I think we've heard a few of those today. I disagree that we can't do anything about the flow of traffic through our municipality. I think it's imperative that council act on behalf of our community to make sure that our streets are local and are residential and not allowed to be rat runs for a range of people that just pass through at great speed, causing inconvenience. We have a situation where it's obvious that people come off Victoria Road, find their way through there up to Pittwater Road on their way north or west. And that's unacceptable from my point of view. That intersection on Victoria Road should be closed off, should have no right turn. And the residents in both Manning Road and also in Prince Edward Parade should be protected adequately with speed reduction processes. So, Mr Mayor, I can't support the motion in its current form because I think it's based on bad data. Decisions based on bad data are poor decisions. And I do support strongly that we act on behalf of our communities to make sure that through traffic and speeding traffic is dealt with.
Councillor, could I ask, are you of a mind to foreshadow an alternate motion if this fails?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I think the alternate motion is pretty straightforward, is that we defer this matter until we validate the data which we're making a decision on. And I think it's important, as raised by the residents, as we've done with Bonifant Road, we need to have the traffic consultant engage with the local residents there. So it would be twofold. One is ensure that the decision is deferred to ensure that the decision is made on accurate data. And secondly, that any traffic study be done in consultation with the residents concerned.
Right, thank you. Anybody wishing to speak for the motion? Anybody wishing to speak against the motion?
I'm
Councillor Miles.
not speaking against the motion, and given now there is a foreshadowed motion, I can't raise another foreshadowed motion. I don't disagree with the sentiment, but I don't think it is instructive enough. I wonder whether I might propose some amendments, but they're fairly substantial in the wording. So I would be number one, receiving and noting the report. Number two, working with residents and stakeholders of the streets of Hillcrest, Sunnyside, Prince Edward Isla and Manning to develop a strategy to make the streets and surrounding areas safer. Number 3, engaging with the RMS to investigate positioning of lights coming on and off of Victoria Road. I think we've heard from residents tonight that coming off of the right-hand turn off of Victoria Road into Manning Street, and then the dogleg into Prince Edward Street, and the capacity of Prince Edward Street to be a rat run as it goes straight up to Gladesville Road, could potentially be alleviated by going into Sunnyside or Hillcrest, where there's no rat run opportunity because they don't actually connect to anything other than adjoining residential streets.
You said we could just capture the words.
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Sorry. Engaging with the RMS to investigate positioning of.
Sorry, if you just give us a minute, we'll see if we can catch up to you. See you. It's well ahead of us. Okay.
It sort of is, but the placement of lights, I think we need to constantly to do that. Yeah, I think we need to investigate. And I think
yeah. You're gonna go, please. Council, how's that looking to you at the moment?
The report be received and noted that 2, council work with residents and stakeholders to develop a strategy to make streets safer. I did list the streets, but I'm sure that we can pick up the gist. That we engage with the RMS to investigate placement of regarding positioning of lights on Victoria Road and section of Manning Road. It was fine, and then again, the council liaise with New South Wales Police Gladesville Local Area Command to raise concerns of residents relating to speeding, requests and enforcement of speed controls. Same. So at the moment, this is a amendment, not a foreshadowed.
Do you have a second for the amendment?
No.
Councillor Cratchler, have you had something you'd consider putting?
No, well, I think the bulk of what Councillor Miles has said is actually what I had already said, apart from the bit about lights. And I think some of the residents mentioned that they didn't think lights were a good idea, which comes back to my point, which is work with the residents and the state to try and deliver an outcome that suits everyone.
So,
if lights comes up, it comes up.
So you're not accepting the changes, so you have seconded for the amendment? So we're working with the amendment at the moment. Councillor Miles.
I don't think that lights is not an issue. I think that the placement of the lights is an issue. I think that's come through in the concerns that residents have brought to us, that the placement of the lights and the traffic on and off Victoria Road are the key issue here. The rat run that goes down Manning then into Prince Edward rather than down Manning, obviously there are concerns that the report that's written on that specific issue didn't compile the data that was appropriate to addressing it. There's a number of issues here that need to be addressed, not the smallest of them. The relationship between residential streets and the semi-arterial roads like Manning Street, which are or do have the capacity to be widened and to have other infrastructure used or traffic calming device used on them to make the street safer. I think that going down Prince Edward Street is very different than travelling down Manning Road, and I take the concerns about social isolation of the residents at Glanville Court, but we're not suggesting that they dogleg and speed down Manning Road. We're suggesting that we come up with an overall strategy, which is, to your point, for Hillcrest Avenue, Sunnyside Street, with Prince Edward Street, with Manning Road and Isla Street. It would seem pretty sensible to me to investigate whether or not traffic turning right onto Sunnyside or onto Sunnyside would stop the rat run, because it may do. Because if it turns into Sunnyside and there's a dead end at the end of the street, they have to turn left or right. People aren't going to use that as a rat run, and they're not going to dogleg around and go back to Prince Edward Street. I think that your point that we need to talk further about this is exactly what I'm suggesting as well. It's just that I think that we can use this data and previous data and engage with the state government as to what traffic is doing in this section. And forming a committee with residents is great, talking to the residents is great, but I think we have to have that dialogue a bit broader. And I think we need to involve the RMS because you said you didn't want to talk about lights, and the residents didn't want to talk about lights. The residents do want to talk about lights. I've spoken to the residents about the lights. This whole issue is about the relationship between an RMS road and our local streets, and people using our local streets inappropriately as a rat run. It would seem logical to me to talk to our local member and the RMS to try and find a solution to that. And that's all that I'm suggesting here.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody wishing to speak against the amendment? Councillor Williams first.
Yes, Mr Mayor. I'm confused because Councillor Miles was talking about Hillcrest, but his motion refers to Manning Road. I'd seek clarification as to which one for the lights you're referring to.
All of them.
Lights on all
So,
of them?
no, not lights on all of them. The placement of the lights where the current pedestrian crossing is from the Gladesville Hospital onto the Hunters Hill side of the road doesn't have any traffic implications other than being a pedestrian access point from one side of the road to the other. It seems logical to me where there is a right-hand turn into Manning, then to Prince Edward, that you would either move the traffic lights down to there and close Prince Edward Street and look at traffic calming devices down Manning Road up to Gladesville Road, or you would move it further along to Sunnyside or one of the other streets where if you did turn into those streets, add a set of lights, it is not a rat run because you get to the end of that street and you either turn left or right. So you can't... the problem being people either zip down Prince Edward Street and pick up speed, and there are traffic calming devices there, but they pick up speed and they're able to get to their destination by driving down Prince Edward Street. If you turn onto Sunnyside Street, you get to a dead end, turn left or right. So my point is investigate the whole area and the placement of lights, and perhaps a pedestrian set of pedestrian lights could be moved or utilised better if they were a vehicle-based set of lights and pedestrian. And it might just solve some of the issues with particularly with the right-hand turn off of Victoria Road.
I think we're moving into a very technical review of the situation. Perhaps it's certainly beyond me as a councillor. If I could just have one more one, please.
Yeah, sure.
If you were to take, engage with the RMS and add it to Councillor Crassoy's motion, I think you just about have what you're suggesting.
That's what I'm suggesting.
So
you're wanting to change advocacy to the state government, which governs the RMS, to RMS?
No, forming a working party. I think that the council now has data that council has data that it can use, I'm conscious that I don't want for a $7,000 report to be tossed out the window just because it didn't come up with the data that we wanted. That we should use that data to advocate our position as council to the state government and come up with a couple of options before we take it to the residents, rather than form a working party to do that.
So we take out the words working party. Sorry, excuse me, Mr. Mayor, is this okay that we're having this conversation?
Please.
So just take out the words working party and just say working with
group.
residents.
That council engage with the state government to investigate alternatives to Sunnyside Estate and adjoining streets, with the view to bringing alternatives to the community to solve the traffic issues in those areas. Sorry, going too quick.
Just hold just for a moment, please.
Well, and you're also changing my...
Just hold for 1 moment,
Hence
please,
why
while we get the words, please. You can go back to your original motion, please. Does that cover your intent?
No, because I believe we need to use this data to come up with some alternative options to take to the residents so that we can come up with some outcome rather than forming a working party or just talking about it. I think we need to come up with some options out of this data and with the RMS so that we can continue this dialogue and not just say because the data in this report isn't what we wanted.
What words would you like to use in here to
The council engaged with the state government. The council engaged with the state government and our local member to develop options for improving the traffic and pedestrian safety and name the streets.
Okay, just give us 1 moment. In the local area. Does that cover your thoughts, Councillor Miles?
Yep.
Councillor Crasper? Is that acceptable to you?
I just think that the residents... Can I just speak for a second on this?
Okay.
Yeah. I just feel like the residents came to us months ago, they wanted a solution, they wanted it then. And when I said that we needed to do this properly and have data to make a good decision, it wasn't met with a great response. And so Councillor Williams saying you don't make your decisions on bad data or no data. So we had no data back then when you wanted to close that street. We have data now and it has its recommendations. And if we want to question the data, then perhaps we do need to go back to the consultants and do that. But just jumping straight to working with the state government, we know how slowly those wheels turn. We've been doing it in Bonifin Road for years now. We need to come up with some good, immediate solutions to quell the alarm of the residents of that precinct. And advocate to the state government for longer term solutions for want of a long-term traffic study, which I believe council are working towards. So I don't want to whack that into a motion and make it complicated. I just want us as a council to engage now with the residents. Gully came up with some suggestions. They have some thoughts.
Councillor Craswell, I think that's a no. You don't
Okay,
accept, you're not accepting the amendment. So could you just hold it there? I'm sorry to cut you
Try
off.
having dinner with me.
I don't mean to be rude, but I think we've got a bigger agenda, and I think your answer is you're not willing to accept the amendment.
Well,
So-
I would if the residents were included, just that we have a conversation with the residents before we go skipping off to the state
Councillor
government.
Miles.
It's not about skipping off to the state government. It is about, we've paid $7,000 for this report. It has data, reliable or unreliable. I'd say that, we probably would have opted for two devices to monitor the traffic rather than one. But we have data now. I don't want to throw the options that have been put on the table, including closing Prince Edward Street through traffic from Manning Road off of Victoria Road. I don't want to say that we're not going to do that. I think we need to investigate this further and look at a number of different ways that we can fix this problem. And shutting Prince Edward Street, in my mind, is still a very live option, as are a number of other traffic calming opportunities. I don't think that we need to say that we've done the report. It says that we shouldn't close off Prince Edward Street, therefore it's done and finished. I think that what we need to do is use the data in this report to come up with a more holistic strategy for all of these streets. And that inevitably involves the RMS, because the RMS is the key, the root cause of this problem.
The state body.
So Councillor Miles, the motion which is here.
Yes.
Which
I'm speaking to.
Remain like this.
Yes.
This is the amendment. Can I check that we've got the right ones? Down at the bottom of the screen. Is that correct?
Number 4 up here.
So which motion, which is it's the bottom one, isn't it? Councillor Miles' motion, seconded by Councillor Collins. Do you wish to make any change to those 4 points?
I think that the point 4 is actually supposed to be down in the motion that I move, which would make it point 5. Oh no, it would make it point. Yeah. Yeah.
Does that cover, is that exactly what you want?
Yeah, I'll leave it like that.
All right.
Because I'm happy to accept that because it includes the residents.
We'd be happy to accept that, that's fine. I'm not precluding the residents, I'm saying we need to take some options to them, not just...
So Councillor Crasso, are you happy to accept
Yes.
what's in here as an amendment to the motion into the original motion?
Yeah, as a seconder, I'm happy to accept.
As long as that's point 2 stays.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Councillor Miles. Thank you, councillors. Is there another issue here that there seem to be some anomalies in the report that we need to investigate?
In the report or in the
Yes. Okay, there is. I think there's, I think if I might, Mr. Coote said there's some issues he wants to tell us about, and Mr. Taylor Fick said there's a couple of things perhaps wrong. Number of sensors, location of sensors. So maybe if you'll tell us what they are, we can look at that in the future too, and make sure that we've got it right. We go back to the consultant and ask that question. Is that all right with you?
We're going to do that anyway.
All right, so please correct me if I'm wrong here. We have an amendment to the original motion, which is the original motion, taken up by Councillor Crasso. Anybody wishing to speak against that? Councillor Williams. Now, have you spoken against that already? No, you haven't.
Well, not the change.
Not with the change one. Thank you, Councillor.
I always get exacerbated when people twist the issue. The issue is that the data is inappropriate. It's not that because we didn't get the answer that we wanted that I'm complaining about the report. I'm complaining about the professionalism of the location of the sensors and the adequacy of the number of sensors. That needs to be addressed before we can actually make decisions in relation to this in consultation with the residents. The other point I'd raise is that we've now got in the motion one option in terms of traffic lights on Manning Road. I find that amazing. You're going to have to increase the study area right the way up to Ryde Road, right the way across to Pittwater Road, because a set of lights will cause a beacon to be there. People will not come up over the overpass. They will just go through there, quickly find their way right through those residential streets onto Pittwater Road, which is their agenda. I think that, again, is council jumping at issues rather than having consultation with the broader community if that's what it wants to do. Lights were ruled out 30 years ago for the very reason it will encourage rat running and it will provide a viable alternative to the current overpass. I think the residents will be absolutely incensed in those streets all the way up to Ryde Road, all the way across to Pittwater Road. We're raising concerns in the community that are unnecessary. I think if you go through the process of consultation with those local residents that are currently impacted, find solutions for them. Let's not open a can of worms that was dealt with many years ago. Lights off Victoria Road will only create enormous problems for a large portion of the western part of our municipality.
Councillor Williams, would you like to suggest an alternate motion, or would you want to foreshadow an alternate motion? How would you like to?
Mr. Mayor, I've already done that and totally ignored in the process.
Do you wish to move an alternate motion?
I have, it's up there. Although I'd like to clarify.
I think you foreshadowed the
You
motion,
foreshadowed.
didn't you?
You didn't
If I'm
move.
correct, it was foreshadowed. Would you like to move that motion?
Well, we haven't dealt with the substantive motion. But what I'd be foreshadowing is that the report be received and noted, that a further report be brought to the next ordinary meeting of council advising of the distance from the speed humps, the sensors that were used, I can hand this up, that were used to measure the vehicle speed, and the clarification of other discrepancies in the headway report. The council liaise with New South Wales Police and Gladesville Local Area Command to raise the concerns of residents relating to speed and request enforcement of speed controls. The council engages in consultation with the residents of the Sunnyside estate on this issue. And that's what I think.
That's your foreshadowed motion. Thank you. All right, so anybody wishing to speak for Councillor Crassoy's motion?
If you want to remove the lights from that.
Anybody wishing to speak against Councillor Crassoy's motion? Councillor Sanderson.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, look, I have great sympathy with people in Sunnyside through even the length of time that this process has taken. I think if we go down the path that Councillor Miles and Councillor Crassoy are proposing, we'll be bogged down for the rest of the term of this council, and I don't want that to happen. I think the foreshadowed motion that Councillor Williams has just presented presents a far better way of doing it. The best thing to come out of this report was that we liaised with New South Wales Police on this matter. We're retaining that exactly as it was in the original recommendation. We're receiving the note in the report. We're also asking that the report be clarified, because clearly there are issues with it, and I'm quite sure that it has underestimated the speed just through the process of the sensors being too close to speed humps. I think it's important we get clarification on that. The final item is that we engage with the people of the Sunnyside estate to try to find solutions. And I don't think we need to go further than that. Let's just keep it simple and get the job done.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody wishing to speak for Councillor Crassoy's motion? Anybody else against? Any clarifications required?
Right of reply.
You have? Councillor Crassoy, right of reply.
Thank you, Councillor Sanderson. You're always so calm and logical in the way you present points, and I agree. And looking into that traffic study is important. When this came to council at the start of this year, when I voted against closing Prince Edward Street without consultation, the then General Manager said it would take until about June. And here we are in December, it's been a year. If we defer this, if we drag it out, it's just going to be left too far behind. I agree with Councillor Williams' point about the light, and I was so excited about resident consultation, I didn't see that point was still in there. And I've just looked at Councillor Miles across the table, and we're happy to take out that point 3 about traffic lights, because that would come up in point 5 anyway, in the council engaging with state government, local member and developing options to improve traffic. And if one of the options is lights, it will come up in that process. So if the residents are concerned the data's not good, it's good enough to look into it, but I think we need to press forward. I understand that we need a broader suburb traffic study. We all understand that. And with the development coming up at Gladysville, it's got to be inevitable. And it's a huge priority. I do think a lot of the people racing down that street are residents as well. I don't think all the people flying down that road are out of area people abusing our suburb. And so I think it's very important that the message we put to the people who enter that precinct is that humans live here. And that's easily done with a few simple measures early up. I love the local traffic sign, a few measures on the road. I think this motion is completely doable, and I'm happy to take out the lights. In fact, I'd rather them out. So.
Very good. So there it is on screen. We're all done. If there are no further clarifications, it's clear to everybody what we're voting on. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. We move to item 5.1, and the first speaker we have is Mr. Young. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councillors and staff, and thank you for your time. I'm very much against the idea of adopting a day that's attached to the amalgamation issue. I'm less passionate about amalgamation. I happen personally to be fairly ambivalent, but I live in Gladesville and my suburb is cut on a boundary, which I think is problematic, and I do think that a bigger council could be a bit better. But I don't really care about the amalgamation debate anywhere near as much as I care about council putting its name and representing me by taking this particular position that the anti-amalgamation group and that outcome necessarily needs to be celebrated by my council. There is no amalgamation debate happening at the moment, no issue from state government. It may not happen for 10 or 15 years. It doesn't need to come up, it doesn't need to be put to us, it doesn't need to be divisive. But there are plenty of other people like me who don't feel passionately against amalgamation, who might be mildly or strongly pro-amalgamation. I actually think the majority of the municipality pretty much don't care. I really think most people don't actually care. But for those who do, the level of emotional attachment can be quite high, and it's certainly not all anti-amalgamation. So my request of council is not to put my council's name to this at all at the moment. Let it go. It doesn't need to be there. We don't need another day. We don't need the issue to come up. And we certainly don't need the people like me who don't agree with that stance to have it thrown in our faces as an insult that we don't exist or that our opinions aren't valid. But if council does take it, and if there is a day that becomes this issue again, well, it's going to promote a response from us. Either we're going to shut up and sit there and say, oh, it doesn't matter, or we're going to speak up for ourselves. But it just doesn't need to happen. So my request is don't do it. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillors, how many questions, please? Councillor Miles.
Your focus is around the date, I assume, not having a Hunters Hill Day and what form that may take and what
yeah,
what it is.
Yeah,
it's about that date.
It is, and I think it's not just the date. I think it's where an issue comes from. It came from the date. It came from that issue. That's what it's about. So you can put a sticker over it and call it about values, or you can do whatever you want. But the origin and the actual essence of what it's about is it's about the amalgamation fight and the victory. That's what it's about. Whatever you call it. And we know that from the date it was picked on, from the way the whole thing evolved. My view, sorry.
Councillors, any further questions? Councillor Sanderson, thank you.
In your correspondence, you speak about being divisive. I don't sort of fully understand that. Would you like to explain on that?
Sure, thanks. So I think where you are in the municipality and your daily experience might be a bit different about whether you really like a small independent Hunters Hill Council or whether you think we'd be better off with a bigger one. So for me, I live very close to a boundary and my local council is split across two local government areas, Ryde and Hunters Hill, and I don't see that the councils plan infrastructure well. I don't know that they plan traffic flows, parking management. I don't think there's great integration. I think Gladesville suffers from being divided across the two areas. So if you live in the South Ward, you may not have that same day-to-day experience or frustration. If you think that council should be doing, say Lane Cove Council, spending a fortune at the moment building infrastructure, car parks particularly, to serve, and I think car parks are actually important for business, but if you have the capacity to do that, and if you have specialist skills that come with a larger council, and if you have a larger rates base and the ability to get on with bigger projects, and you wholly own the area or the precinct, you might do that. But I see that Hunters Hill Council and Ryde will struggle to do that in Gladesville. So that's why I find it divisive, because my experience is not so much to celebrate this independence, but to acknowledge that there are probably some trade-offs we're losing.
But in talking about that division, you don't seem to have spoken about the division as much as problems in Gladesville, and I don't think the two issues should be conflated. I mean, this is quite a different council.
So what's your question, please?
I'm asking for, what I'm getting at is to get a response to the question about the divisiveness rather than issues to do with specifically with Gladesville, because I mean, I think, you know, this council has provided an excellent planning proposal for the future of Gladesville. We have really given some thought, and I think we've done a better job than Ryde personally. But you know, so I think it's an oversimplification of the argument to you know, talk about division and then start to talk about problems in Gladesville. I don't see the connection. If you can explain that, I think
Sure,
I'd be very welcome.
Yeah, no, thanks. Yeah, no, I mean, I find it divisive when we can come up with different conclusions on what matters, and that's probably perfectly reasonable. Like, I totally respect people's view to be anti-amalgamation, totally cool with it. But the thing is, it's divisive to tell a bunch of people who may not come to the same conclusion, and plenty of us don't, that we don't exist, or that our opinion isn't relevant because council's putting its name to this idea to this day. That's what I find divisive.
Okay.
I don't know if it's answered the question, sorry. Maybe not clear.
Thank you. Any Councillor Cresswell?
Thanks for your feedback. Do you think there are any events in our local area that you feel do celebrate our suburb and our unification of place as the residents who live here, from the tip of Woolwich to Pittwater Road?
Yeah, I think, thanks Councillor. Muckawall has come up a couple of submissions. People have identified that as a great community event, and that's a great event that exists. I'm not living in my daily life wishing that there was more or feeling that there needs to be more. That doesn't enter my mind. Maybe I'm busier than people, or other people have identified a need I haven't met. We've seen Happy Hands and mental health driven initiatives, and they can be good for the community and integrate and be purpose driven. But I guess to the point, Councillor Miles, it has an origin. Someone starts something for a reason. There's some essence in this and some reason why something's put forward. If they care about mental health, if they care about the amalgamation debate, something is the motivator for it. If you're attached to what that motivation is, I think you throw your heart behind it and you support it and agree with it. I don't think we're short of days for stuff. I think Muckawall exists, it's great. I'm not longing for more. I'm not against it. But...
Thank you, Mr. Young.
Thank you very much.
The next speaker we have is Mr. Astridge. Welcome, Mr. Astridge.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councillors. I'll be speaking for Hunters Hill Day. And I don't believe it's really over one issue. I do believe it is over quite a number of issues. And I'll go through those issues. I might take a little bit longer than 3 minutes, but I'll have to apologise for that. In 1967, the Battle of Kelly Bush banded together to save 20 acres of bushland on the harbour. Kelly's smelting works was closed. It was offered to A.V. Jennings through the government sources to purchase the site, construct flats, which included 3 8-storey blocks, which we all know what happened there. We now have a call it Kelly's Bush, we're very close to not having it. Same year, the oil company Amoco attempted to purchase the heritage Garibaldi Inn, to demolish it, and to build a service station until residents fought against it. And the New South Wales government eventually placed a conservation order on it in 1979. In 1981, the Register of the National Estate classified Hunters Hill as a conservation area for its importance as an exceptionally low density garden suburb. It included our many historic buildings and structures. Particularly fierce was a campaign waged by residents and council to prevent multi-storey high-rise developments at Pulpit Point and the Parramatta River foreshore after Mobil Oil sold their storage depot in 1988. And after a number of years, a compromise was reached with no high-rise included. The battles with government bureaucracy continued into the 90s. At that same time, Hunters Hill was forced to take all the noise and pollution from aircraft, both landings and takeoffs, as they aimed the third runway at us. Our residents came to the fight against the government and politicians. It included the blockade of the airport. Through the actions of residents and councils, the government was forced to legislate the introduction of the sharing modes and remove the noise saturation of Hunters Hill and Bennelong Funnel. A great achievement of the 20th century was Hunters Hill happened in 1997, when the New South Wales government intended to sell off the horse paddock and the goat paddocks at Clark's Point to build high-rise flats on the waterfront land. The 2001 victory was achieved by our residents, our council, and the land turned back over to the trust and saved from the hands of developers. Also in 2002, Hunters Hill High School was about to be closed, sold off by the New South Wales government. Residents handed together and the council and fought against the closure. And in 2002, the decision was withdrawn just weeks before the planned closure date. We still have Hunters Hill High School, thank goodness for the residents. In 2003, Hunters Hill was again under threat of amalgamation with the municipality of Ryde and Lane Cove. The residents and the council united together in a vigorous protest against amalgamation and won the fight in an unqualified victory. The government backed off and walked away. In 2007, we were successful in preserving the pride. The state government was about to sell off the heritage estate to private developers, and through the campaign waged by Hunters Hill residents groups, it was eventually transferred to New South Wales Health, from the Health to the Department of Lands, and became part of the adjoining Crown Reserves. Once again, amalgamations rise their ugly head in 2013. The state government wanted a mega council and soon changed it to a mega council. Again, the community of the council came together to fight the battle, and an appeal was finally lodged by council lawyers in the Court of Appeals during July 2017, and council won on a technicality that the new amalgamated council did not constitute a single area of contiguous land, as required by law, because two council areas can't be separated by water. It was the Lane Cove River. I'm getting dry. As you can see from the past, there has been much more to celebrate than just amalgamations. Hunters Hill Day is not about a division, but it is about, thanks Zach. Hunters Hill Day is not about a division, or nothing to do with a division, but it is a time to remember the past altercations against our community, our environment, and the people who fought bravely against the incredible odds and stuck with it to the winning end. The community and council of Hunters Hill used to be congratulated and rewarded for their achievements, and is looking forward to formally adopting 31st of July each year as Hunters Hill Day, as is the day of our last altercation with the government and developers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ashby.
Any questions?
Councillor, is there any questions of Mr Astridge? Councillor Cresswell.
Thank you. It's always great to hear that history, and I'm very proud of it and proud to live here, and very grateful for the people that did fight all those battles.
Thank you, Councillor.
Do you feel that the event Mukabula, which was set up to celebrate our local community and our local community groups, we used to have a street parade. It used to be a much more local feeling celebration, though it's still very much about locals and local community groups. Do you think that the acknowledgement and celebration of that amazing history of our establishment couldn't be recognised within that already celebratory day that acknowledges our local community and its history?
Good question, Councillor. I was the chairman of the Mukabula Committee for 20 years. I was the chairman, which we then changed it to the events committee, but then that covered all the events throughout Hunters Hill. Mukabula is specifically designed to celebrate the differences between the Lane Cove River and the Hunters Hill. As a peninsula, Hunters Hill whole is a peninsula, not just over the overpass, but the whole of Hunters Hill is a peninsula. And it was basically designed to celebrate that. It's got nothing to do with all these issues that I just related to. Does that answer the question?
It gives me your thoughts on it. Thank you. Yeah, thanks.
Councillor Sanderson.
Mr Astridge, I mean, that was a fabulous history. I enjoyed listening to it and remembering all of the points. With the date of the 31st, I mean, I guess the thing that defines it is that that's... Sorry. With regard to the 31st of July, I think that's the one date that stands out that you can, of all those events. Most of the other events, the events are just, or the issue just sort of went away or fizzled out or whatever. So do you see that as a reason why the
I'd say
that first is that defines why it should be that date?
I see it as the last altercation we had with the government. So therefore, that being the last altercation we had with the government, as you can see from many altercations, that should be the day. That's what I believe.
Councillors, any further questions? Thank you very much, Mr Astridge.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker we have is Mr Griffiths. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, councillors. My mother was born in Hunters Hill, and at Hunters Hill Public School we have an unbroken succession of 90 years. I was born in Hunters Hill, and with the Historical Society I take visitors from outside of our area around looking at what we have here in Hunters Hill. A magnificent suburb, an ambience and something of history that we're all proud of. My wife was born in Hunters Hill and her father was the town clerk here for 32 years, and he thwarted two efforts by the Ryde Council to take over our municipality. So the roots are a little bit close here in Hunters Hill, as you might imagine. I also believe in democracy, and I saw that thwarted in a way I couldn't imagine when they tried to impose this amalgamation on our municipality. It would have meant Hunters Hill and Lane Cove having a mere one voice, as against Ryde Council, 7 voices. Intolerable. Now, this has been a significant happening in Hunters Hill. July 31st was when it was finalised, and I think Hunters Hill Day would and should be recognised because of that line in the sand. Remember what happened and what could happen, because I believe the issue is not off the shelf with this current state government. I rest my case.
Thank you very much. Councillors, are there any questions of Mr. Griffiths?
Hello.
Mr. Griffiths, are you on the Hunters Hill Historical Society?
Yes, I am.
Because I think they weren't in favour of a separate event.
That doesn't mean that I'm not.
Yeah, okay.
But I think you're right, actually. The president at the time and is, I believe, not in favour of it.
Thank you very much.
I got off relatively unscathed.
You did.
I've enjoyed your history walk, so I don't need to ask any more questions.
The next speaker we have is Mr. Hart. Welcome.
Mr Mayor, councillors, thank you. Good evening, and I ask that you, the councillors, support the proposal. Although there are some disputes, I feel that we genuinely value the heritage, the culture and the environment of Hunters Hill. The question is, should we have a specific day to acknowledge it, and when? Has anyone here ever forgotten their wedding anniversary? Well, I have, more than once, and I don't recommend it. But I do digress. My point is, for an event, a person or a place, nothing says remember me like a date in the calendar. It focuses your attention on what is good about something. This is what we are looking to establish and want to celebrate. The proposal uses words like highlight values and history and draw on the positive achievements and elements that bind our community together. My reading of the majority of the objections, my own, was that they're not so much against the concept of Hunters Hill Day, but feel the proposed day might be a poke in the eye to those who supported the amalgamation. Done correctly, I believe the day can also focus on what can be done better in Hunters Hill, in our council, in our area. I'm confident that the council communications could include a call for feedback and views for and against. Honestly though, I don't mind if the day is a bit of a poke in the eye to our state politicians to remind them of the strength of feeling that we have for our municipality. I was a councillor at the turn of the century, this century, not the last one. I've lived here for only 22 years, but this is my second fight for the existence of Hunters Hill Council. On the need for a reminder day, can I say that this won't be the last time that we have to stand up? Others want to take, whether for revenue or for them to have more power or us to have less power. Keeping the history alive is a good idea. It could be a good marketing idea to get more participation in our council committees. Nothing says protection like an involved community. Despite losing the amalgamation issue, the government still took some control away from council. As you, the councillors, are aware, you don't have planning approval powers now. My own response, so change can happen by stealth. My own response was to actually join the independent planning panel as a community rep. Let's keep and promote our local input. I believe creating a Hunters Hill Day on 31 July will help us and future residents focus on what is good about this area, how to protect it and how to improve it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Councillors' questions. Councillor Collins.
Yes, you didn't make a submission,
No.
did you? Is there a reason you didn't want to make a submission?
Given the way I was through the fight all the way through, and at the time the submissions were going through, I thought it was actually a fairly compelling idea and it didn't need my support in writing. So now I feel that, and I acknowledge the submissions that have been put in, and I thought, no, I should actually not put pen to paper, but put shoe leather to the council chamber.
Thank you.
Councillors, any further questions? Thank you, Mr. Hart.
Thank you very much.
Is there anybody? Mr. Jenkins. I've just been reminded, 3 minutes, Mr. Jenkins.
There's no way you're going to succeed on that, Mr. Mayor, because there are some serious corrections that need to be made to the report, and that needs to be made, and I would prefer that is not included in the submission I would otherwise and will make. The report is incorrect in a number of significant ways. In paragraph 2, for example, it talks about councillors meeting on the 23rd of July considered a mayoral minute for the 1-year commemoration of the New South Wales Premier's announcement on the 27th of July. It's got nothing to do with that. It's got nothing to do with that. The report goes on and says that the matters before you, as a result of the resolution back in July, it's before you from a later resolution that was made. And perhaps what I could do is just to hand up to everybody the relevant reports. Zach, there you go, you can get busy on that side. There you go, Ross. If I might take you to the first resolution, which is on page 3, at the bottom of page 3, and this is the minutes of the meeting after. So the meeting was on the 23rd of July. What was resolved on the Mayor's motion, seconded by Councillor Williams, apart from it being received and noted, that Council considers an annual celebration of the independence of Hunters Hill to commemorate this day in perpetuity. And that's what's been taken. And might I say this to the General Manager, all this happened well before and before you became General Manager. All these issues. So there's no criticism made in relation to the report. It's just that the people around here actually lived through it in this particular municipality. So what then happened, if you turn over the page to page 4, was that there was a notice of motion that came, and that notice of motion, you can see, had a report and went through a number of amendments, which finally, on page 8, was the resolution that actually results in what we're doing today. And that was a resolution that the Council proposes to adopt the 31st of July each year as Hunters Hill Day, following a consultation. The community be asked by way of notification, local press, etc., of Council's intent to recognise a day for the community to celebrate our local identity, shared values and independence. I wouldn't mind a glass of water too. We're about the same age there, I think. The third one is that the notification explains the significance of Hunters Hill Day, thank you very much, and invites the community to make submissions. In other words, the community needs to be informed about why it is the 31st. Why is this so significant? And then if you go to page 9, there's a very good photograph of the then Mayor and a few people just behind him in waiting in the photograph. But what it has there is that, and it's got a wrong date I see, it should be 31st of July 2017. But what it says in a really pithy summary, couldn't get much shorter than that. That's 4 years of a huge battle. Following an enduring campaign, I like that word, by the community and action by Council, Council received official notification on the 31st of July 2017 that the government had withdrawn its proposal to amalgamate after the New South Wales Court of Appeal declared that this amalgamation proposal was invalid. Now what happened, I'll come to this a bit later on when I come to discussing Hunters Hill Day, but what actually happened on the 31st was the date that's relevant. Because all that happened with the Premier on the Thursday before that Monday was that she announced an intention to withdraw a proposal for those fighting in court, to which there were judgments reserved, but we didn't know when it was coming down. And 3 weeks later, there was to be a local government election through New South Wales. So we've heard governments before make submissions and intentions to do things or to withdraw things, and they never come to fruition. So here we had this, and it wasn't until the next day, the Friday, that we actually found out from the court that its judgment that we've been waiting for and could have taken months still to come was actually going to be handed down on the Monday. And there was a lot of angst. I can remember the council solicitors were primed to go to court at a moment's notice, because what could have happened is that this announcement of intention may never have eventuated. And what may have then happened was a case would come down on the Monday, and if we lose that case, we would have been done away by the afternoon, gone by proclamation. So there was a real concern about whether they were going to go ahead. The alternative was that they would sign the withdrawal and then go along to the court on the Friday. And can I tell you this is what happens, in fact, all the Monday in practice. And they would have said to the court, don't hand down your judgment. We don't want another finding like Coringa against us. Don't hand down your judgment. You no longer have anything before you because we had just withdrawn 2 hours ago the proposal. So don't give a judgment. So we were waiting there in this community until the Monday. And what happened on the Monday was quite an incredible occasion, frankly, in the history of this municipality, and only a one-off. You could say by accident or design, but a one-off day. Because at 10 o'clock, the court came in and gave a number of judgments at 10 o'clock, and one of them was a total victory, not a technicality, can I tell you, a total victory. Because in the court case, there is one obligatory section in the Act for very good reason, and that is that you can't amalgamate, even though you might want to, you can't amalgamate Mossman and Willara, for example. They might like each other, but they're divided by Sydney Harbour. And the Act says you can only amalgamate areas that are like that are contiguous together. And it's a provision that uses the word must. So it's the first hurdle that anybody has to jump. They didn't jump it. They were never going to jump it, in my view, and I said so at the time. And they didn't jump it. So it was a total loss. But then I can remember speaking to the then Mayor Richard Quinn about lunchtime, I think, on the afternoon, and he said, guess what? I said, what, more good news, Richard? And he said, yes, we've just received the letter. And I tell you, in law, it's the receipt of the notification from the minister who's got the power that she has signed the document to withdraw the proposal. And we received it on the same day, the 31st. So there were some of us who maybe drank a little bit too much on that Monday night, because that was an incredible victory that combined the efforts of the council and the community. Can I say one of the great hallmarks of that battle was the closeness between the community and the council. And it was that partnership in what was an extremely tough battle for 4 years that won the day. And I would not want that to divide now under a new council, frankly, because the vast majority of the people in this municipality, regardless of what Collins might say, Councillor Collins or Zach Miles might pretend, the vast majority were supporting the community. And can I tell you this?
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. Phil, what are you basing that on? What did I do?
Sorry?
What did I do? Did I say...
Well, Councillor Miles asked me, it's very polite of him to do so, he asked me what did he do. He moved, in this council, had a motion to withdraw the appeal on the court case, for example. Councillor Miles also was the only person who decided to put his hand up to go onto the amalgamated council when the government was pressuring. So there's some of the things.
No, I'm just in relation to you said that it
might be wise not to ask any questions.
Councillor and Mr. Jenkins, could we just not start a debate? I'm happy for you to answer the question.
That is a point of order, though, Mr.
But let's not have a debate.
Well, the point of order being that Mr Jenkins alluded to numbers, that I said that the majority of people weren't in favour of amalgamation. I've never said that to the best of my...
Well, I'll accept that then. Okay,
my recollection.
Would you mind if we leave it at that point and allow...
Can we do a point of
Mr.
order
Mayor,
for relevance, please? Because I think we're talking about Hunters Hill Day,
Yes.
not who fought and won the
I'd like to let
amalgamation.
Mr Jenkins finish his address.
Okay.
If there are questions of Mr Jenkins,
Mr. Mayor,
you're
on
welcome.
point of order.
Point of order.
I'd also like to know what I apparently said.
What did you say about what?
What you're alluding to him saying, I guess.
Okay. Well, if you listen on, you might get it.
Mr Mayor, I think it's bad form for council to be calling point of orders on a community speaker.
I think we really need the speaker to finish his speaking, and then if you have some questions or clarification, you can do it then. That's the right thing to do.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So...
I didn't want to miss the opportunity to say something.
No, exactly. So what's important here is this particular...
Move to extend. Councillor Williams, Councillor Sanderson, all in favour? That's carried. Please go ahead.
Thank you. So the 31st of July is a very significant date. You put up a mayoral minute to that effect, if I remember rightly. It was noted, no one spoke against it, that it's not a significant day. And can I take you to the submissions? Because I've had a close look at the submissions. And can I say to everybody who put a submission in, including Russell Young, I thank everybody for putting those submissions in, because that's local democracy. That's what we fought for. We fought for people to expose their views in the open light of day, whether they were always against the council, whether they were fighting against the council, whether they wanted us amalgamated or not. They've all, if you read the submissions, you'll get the lot. And that was important because it wasn't 100% that everybody was against the amalgamation, but it was over 80% who were against it, in spite of what others have said that it's less than that, like Councillor Collins. It was over 80% that were in favour of fighting on to keep our independence. And that came in meetings. I sat down at the Sailing Club. I enjoyed the day, the morning session, day session and the night session. I heard some of the best speeches you'll ever hear, given by numbers of people around this table. Richard Quinn was one of them. He's overseas at the moment. He apologised for not being here. But wonderful speeches. And I was desperately keen to hear anybody get up and say, no, I want to amalgamate. I don't want to give you an opportunity to see the financial basis upon it. I don't want to give you a vote or a poll or a referendum. I want to deny you basic democratic principles. But I reckon that's great. Did I hear anybody? And can I tell you, this is an important thing to note, because I went to quite a few of them. There were meetings after meetings in the last 4 years across this state of really upset communities who were upset that they had lost their council through forced amalgamations.
Move to extend. Councillor Williams, Councillor Sanderson, all in favour? Please go ahead.
There were communities right across who came and filled out halls against being forcibly amalgamated. There was not one meeting held in 4 years across New South Wales called by people who wanted to force amalgamation.
Councillor Collins is questioning whether we had 4 people to extend the speaker. We did. We have Councillor Williams, Councillor McLaughlin, Councillor Sanderson and myself. 4. Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
Councillor Miles.
Thank you. So if you look at the report and have a look at all the submissions, you'll find of the submissions that there is not one submission that says this is not a significant day. There's not one submission. Some say, why don't you have Mookabula on some other day, etc. But no one has said, when you read those submissions, that this is not a significant day. And that's the point that was picked up, I think, in the recommendation from the General Manager when that recommendation came through. Because with one addition to that, and this is on page, I think it's on page 92 of your papers, the recommendation is the report be received and noted, and that 31st of July be recognised as, I would suggest a little amendment there, a significant day, because that's what it is, that's what was put out for comment. No one's come back and said it's not. A significant day to reflect on the values that make Hunters Hill a special place with a strong sense of community and pride. So I think it's clear when you read the submissions that were made that that's a no-brainer. That has actually, there's no one opposed to the fact of the recognising that day as being a significant day. The real question comes from the failure of the report to deal with Hunters Hill Day at all. So if you look at the summations called suggestions in the report, you've got it down there that I'm supposed to have supported the announcement of the Premier, which is clearly not right. I've explained it's the 31st of July. You'll see no reference to Hunters Hill Day in the summary because it wasn't perceived that there was a second resolution that had gone through asking for that. So you've actually got to go to the submissions and go through the submissions to find out what the position is.
Would you like to give Mr. Jenkins additional time to speak, councillors?
One last time.
Thank you, Mr. Jenkins.
Could I hurry up? Yes, okay.
Could you finish in 3 minutes, please?
Yes, okay. So in the end, you've got 34 submissions because husband and wives, and I know most of them who've given the submissions, would be horrified if you thought that the female of the species was simply signing because her husband did. There's in fact 34 submissions and 33 submissions in which people made a comment. 25 of them is in favour of Hunters Hill Day annually, and there's 8 that have a variety of things that they say. Some say a bit divisive, don't like division. Others say fabulous that you fought, but and I didn't fight with you, but you know, thank heavens you did, but could be divisive. Well, it's not divisive. It can never be divisive. The Premier said on the day she withdrew, 27th, we could have done, this is the exact words she used, we could have done the process better. Absolutely, is what she said at the media conference. We need to bear responsibility for the implementation. Really? Why don't you allow the ones forcibly merged to demerge, one might ask. So the fact is that there is nothing to be divisive about. The government actually withdrew. It actually withdrew. And so what's now being celebrated is the fact that the government realised that it got the process wrong. What I should do is hand around to everybody so that you can read it in due course, because it wasn't just the process that was wrong, it was the actual policy that was wrong, and there's a mountain of evidence to that effect. So the day should be recognised. It's not divisive. The only people who think it may be divisive are people driven by party politics or by a fact that they don't like what you as a council or the previous council actually did. That's what's driving it, called division. And there is no reasonable division in this case. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jenkins.
Can I have one sip of water before I go?
You've got a question.
Yep. Now's the right time for questions. Councillor Collins.
Thank you. Mr. Jenkins, there's been 19 submissions here that are in favour. Can you tell us which of these supporters you engaged with during the consultation period?
Sorry?
Which of these
Well, it's more than 19, in fact.
Well, there's 19 submissions in favour, but there may have been.
There's 25 people in favour.
Across 19 submissions.
Physical documents, yes.
Well, of those 25 people, how many of those did you engage with during the consultation period?
I sent out an email to members of the Save Hunters Hill Municipality Coalition, informing them of the fact that there was this request by the council for people to make comment. I included in that a video that was taken of the actual celebration that took place 1 year after this event. And in that, I highlighted the kind of issues about whether it was a significant date, what those issues were, and suggested that people wanted to make a submission, they do so. And I've got no doubt other people did their best to get people to put submissions in if they could, if they spoke to them.
So would that be all of the people on this list? Is there anyone on this list you didn't engage with or send information to?
I think I probably would have sent it out to each of those people, but it wasn't just to those people. It was to a greater list than that. I think we had as our members and supporters, basically the people who stood up for this area, didn't give up, melt away, but stood up against the government. There was over 100 who turned up at the celebration, from memory, for either the drinks or for the dinner. And on the list I would have sent to was less than that, I think, but it would have been a list of about 80, I suppose, of people who had strongly supported. And I can assure you, Councillor, that there are many people in this municipality who strongly supported the fight against the government and against the Liberal Party of which you're a member.
Very proudly, thank you.
I know.
Mr. Jenkins. So you mentioned that you, in your submission to these 80 people or so, that you highlighted some of the important issues. Is that right? Can you just elaborate?
Well, I haven't got it here. I'm very happy. Didn't you receive one? I'm very happy to send it to you, if you like, because I'd suggest you actually look closely. Can I suggest to you that you look closely at the videos that were linked to that, so that you could actually see, because I don't remember seeing you at any of the public meetings. I don't remember seeing you at anything to do with saving this municipality. I am answering the question.
Yep.
So I don't think you played any role whatsoever in fighting for this community. So I suggest very much that you do look at that, and I'm very happy to send that tonight when I get home. I will send it to all councillors so that you can actually link through and see what took place and the degree of feeling. I'll also send you a copy, because you weren't there as well, a copy that I can get of the 21 minutes, I think, coverage of the big public meeting that filled the town hall with people who were strongly against this municipality being forcibly merged.
So if
you wish me to do that?
Let's be quite clear here, Councillor. We have an opportunity to ask the Speaker a question, not to enter into a debate.
Are you referring to the video on your YouTube link? Is that right?
I think there's more than one. I can send you whatever I can get.
I did watch the video. That's the one with the performance of the Hunters Hill song. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I did watch that.
Okay. Good.
Now, okay. So you've engaged with all of these the submissions. What councillors have you engaged with about this during the consultation period?
I think I will have spoken to Councillor Williams. I would have spoken to Councillor Sanderson.
I seem to have slipped off speed dial, Phil.
Did you slip off? Councillor Class, I fell off.
You tried to speak to me.
I tried to speak to you.
I fell off speed dial.
You fell off as well. Well, it may be. It may be that you weren't on the friends or the membership or supporters list of those who had the courage to stand up and fight for this municipality.
Now,
One final question, if I may, Mr. Mayor.
and you spoke to me.
Oh, sorry, I would have spoken to the mayor. Yeah.
Councillor Collins.
Have you met with any members of staff about this? And if so, which ones and what was discussed?
What, present staff or?
Council staff, present or otherwise, during the consultation
About
period
Hunters Hill
or up
Day?
to date, yes.
Well, if you can remind me, I can't remember any, but
How about
if you
in the
can
last
remind
3
me.
weeks?
Sorry?
In the last 3 weeks.
No, I can't remember, but if you can remind me or give me any information, I'm very happy to rethink.
You didn't meet with the general manager?
No, I haven't spoken to the general manager. Perhaps I should have, I have to say, because I could have then discussed a bit more about the past history. I apologise to her that I actually didn't speak to her.
Is that, are there any councillors, are there any other questions?
No?
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
I think that does our speaking. I can see Mr. Sanderson's on his feet. Councillor Sanderson.
Mr.
Councillor
Mayor,
Sanderson.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move the recommendations, but with a couple of, well, an amendment to the first part, as Mr. Jenkins had suggested, that we insert the word significant in front of day. I don't know what the better way to run this is, but I would also want either a second motion or a motion or a third point of the motion. I think it's probably better to do it as a second motion if that's acceptable. The second motion would be that Council adopt 31 July each year as Hunters Hill Day.
Why is it you don't want to make that part of the original motion?
Well, we can amend it, but if it gets up, that's good, but I wouldn't want to see the whole lot go down.
I see.
So if it's acceptable, I'll move two separate motions.
I understand.
If not, I will move the
Right, so
recommendation.
you're foreshadowing the third point as a further motion.
If that's acceptable.
All right, thank you. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Williams. Councillor Sanderson, would you like to speak to that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, the history we've heard tonight, this has been going on for a while, and I couldn't have imagined that even more had come out of it. And I haven't prepared anything to speak at all because I can remember so much of this stuff myself. I was a collaborator, if you like, with Mr. Jenkins and Councillor Williams. One of the things that I've enjoyed about people talking tonight is former Councillor Astridge's summary of some of the brilliant points in this amazing place's history, and I can remember some of those really well. Like I could actually I had to look in the diaries and things, but I could actually put a date on the date we saved Hunters Hill High School because I was so closely involved with that one. But again, there are so many of these events, and I think people have a right to be able to celebrate it. They can do whatever they like. We're not going to dictate it. I don't think council needs to put a cent into the celebrations. It can just be the fact that the day's there. We can all go out and do as we please. But some of the things that I can recall was the night that Mr. Jenkins spoke about at the town hall, and I think I forget who it was chaired by now, but we all got up there and we had to speak for 1 minute on an issue, and we rotated around, and at the end of it I think we all got together and we joined arms and were dancing on the stage just, as our protest. And I think it was done alphabetically, so I was fortunate to have former Councillor Shield, whose seat I'm very fortunate to these days occupy. And the spirit on that night was just something amazing, and that was one of the things about this debate. There was nothing. People talk about division, but there was no division. The people were just so united and wanting to get this done. And even though it looked pretty grim at times, I think we all had a faint hope And when the 31st of July came around, I think most of us were pleased that that well, it was just such a reward, and I think people have to have the right to be able to celebrate that. And it is incredibly significant that the two events that all the speakers tonight have spoken about. So I'll speak again to the second motion. I'll leave it on that one for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sanderson. Anybody wish to speak against? Councillor Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before I give my own opinion on whether we should do this day, I would like to speak about this consultation process. The objective of community consultation is to find out what the wider community thinks about a particular issue. And it appears that what we've received is a flood of, I don't know if they're coached responses, but they're encouraged from a single place. We've seen that every single person that submitted in favour of this has received correspondence from Mr. Jenkins. In fact, if you look at, number 6 is actually just a copy and paste of your submission. So what we have here is a stacked deck. We don't actually have a wide consultation information, as we don't have data to support this because it doesn't come from the wider community. And as Councillor Williams pointed out earlier today, he said decisions based on bad data are poor decisions. And I think that's what we've got here. The decisions against this day, there's a lot less of them, but they were independently sourced. So I think we should perhaps try and put a little bit more weight to them in this respect. In any case, the number of people that have responded to this, to impose this across all of Hunters Hill, 14,000 people, and we're talking about 35 people that have got involved in this discussion, is ridiculous. I had my daughter's 4th birthday party yesterday, and there were more than that there. You just cannot take 19 people and say, let's redefine Hunters Hill, let's appropriate the name Hunters Hill and say that Hunters Hill is all about this particular issue, because Hunters Hill is not about a single issue. Hunters Hill is about a lot of things. And by defining this particular day as Hunters Hill, you are saying that the most important part about Hunters Hill is this one particular issue. It is an important issue, but it's not the only issue. To many in the community, some people didn't support amalgamation, some people did. I didn't. I wasn't active in the fight, thank you for reminding me of that, but I didn't support the forced amalgamations. So look, even looking at these submissions as they are, we've got around about 1/3 of people that are against the idea and 2/3 for it. In ordinary majority rules system, well, perhaps in a particular issue that might win the day. But when we're talking about something as important as taking a suburb's name and defining a whole day, appropriating that name, that's the kind of thing that needs to be pretty close to unanimous. It can't alienate 1/3 of the community. It shouldn't alienate any of the community. Now, if you want to have Independence Day, as ridiculous as that is, that would be a different issue. Hunters Hill Day, you do not have the right, you do not have the mandate to appropriate the name of Hunters Hill and take it for your own cause, or any cause. It belongs to everybody. Now, as far as celebrating our community, the idea that this is just a chance for everybody to get together and celebrate the community, we do that a couple of days later at Mukabula, which is fantastic. How many people did we get there? Like 10,000?
I think it's closer to 20,000.
20,000? Right, so even more than how many, we had 100 people at this, the Hunters Hill Club. This is not a community-wide, people aren't asking this from the community. This is at most an element of the community. It is by no means a community-wide, it hasn't come from the community. So I will just briefly speak about the negative submissions, or the people that think we should leave Hunters Hill as it is.
Councillor, you're running out of time. Can you wrap it up or speak to the motion?
I will speak. I'm speaking to the motion, and I would certainly think I would be welcome to get an extension, considering...
Extension time, Councillor Miles, Councillor McLaughlin, all in favour? It's carried.
Thank you. I won't ask for as many as Mr. Jenkins. I won't need any more. The Hunters Hill Historical Society have written, and they're not supportive of it. They do not see the historical significance to the degree that it should be Hunters Hill Day. We have the Hunters Hill Trust that have, left a neutral stance because they've said it's divided. So we've got two of our, the keepers of our culture and our heritage that have said this isn't a good idea. I just think that that the community aren't asking for this. It is divisive. It will always have an element of negativity in it. Unlike the community events, there's no one saying that we shouldn't have, carols by candlelight or, Mukabulla. This will always be a divisive issue. And look, the tension that's come in the room just on this, I must say I've never actually been yelled at in this chamber, and I don't appreciate it. We're already seeing conflict, and not only will it divide this chamber, it will divide the community. So I don't support it.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody wishing to speak for the motion?
I just have a question.
Is your question?
Now the time I might
Is your
ask
question
that. Well, respectfully, General Manager, I think I might need to ask it of Mr. Crevice, who's been in council a bit longer, or perhaps you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just curious, the Hunters Hill Trust, which was established February 7th, 1968, when 500 residents came to the town hall. Does council recognise that date?
The date the trust was set up?
Do we?
I must say I wasn't here on that date either.
Does someone know the answer to that?
I
Does
think you might
council
have
formally
somebody-
recognise the date that the Hunters Hill Trust was
In the gallery?
established? For very important reasons.
I wouldn't think so.
Okay.
I wouldn't think that the council sat down and recognised that date, or perhaps other dates.
Significant. And does council recognise the date that the battlers for Kelly's Bush, after some 16 years, finally had the state government purchase the land back from Amy Jennings? Do we recognise that date?
Well, I think you have to go back in the records to see what was said at the time, but I think they certainly saw it as an important date. Whether they sought to recognise it and enshrine it's another issue.
So important dates we've never forgotten, but we've never formally recognised. That is...
That's possible.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not sure that's correct. I'm correct, but that's possible. All right, anybody wishing to speak for the motion? Councillor McLaughlin.
I'll speak for the motion, and I agree with the amendments that Councillor Sanderson has suggested. But I have to say, when I think it was Mr. Jenkins came to me and said July 31 is coming up, I actually couldn't remember. Because at the time, as a new council, we were pretty busy doing all the things we needed to do to deliver on all the things we said we would do if we didn't amalgamate. And then when Councillor Williams put up a motion proposing July 31 should be recognised every year as Hunters Hill Day, I thought, I agree with that, if that's what the community wants. And if that's what they want, then that's what we should do. But again, I was adamant that council shouldn't really spend time and money on it. It shouldn't be a day that we bask in our survival, but it's to simply recognise what we fought for. We fought for our place and our right to shape our place. Now, the community has spoken. I think it's actually a pretty good result to get 28 submissions on an issue. And I think the number of submissions that we have received goes to show the passion that everyone has on both sides of this issue. Councillor Collins says there was a rallying of the troops on one side of the debate. Well, that might be correct, but it's also perfectly appropriate because that's what democracy is. You know, one party leads their troops and the other party leads their other troops. But I have been swayed by the 9 submissions who individually and off their own bat chose to make their feelings heard on this issue, and they should not be taken lightly. They came from a cross-section of our community. People from Gladesville, the local Anglican minister. There are a number of different people in the community who wanted to have a say on this issue, and that's how it should be. I'm particularly swayed by Russ when he said in his submission that Hunters Hill Council needs to demonstrate progress, delivering the operating synergies and reduce costs and improve performance said to be available by extending the ROC concept, which was claimed as the reason why amalgamation wasn't necessary. Now, he's absolutely right. We are exploring partnerships with others. We're working in conjunction with other councils to reduce our costs. This is what we said we would do if we didn't amalgamate. And we are doing it, whether we have Hunters Hill Day or not. Also, I note that many of the submissions state that this day is all about celebrating the community's right to make its own local decisions. And that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing as a council now. But to me, this day should be about reflecting on and celebrating all of the issues that have made our community and all the issues that we fought. And Councillor Astridge went through them. I'll just mention them: Kelly's Bush, Clark's Point, the continuing battle for Nelson Parade, and the myriad of other battles that our community takes on to ensure our residents have the best possible living and working environment. It shouldn't be an official program, as Councillor Sanderson pointed out, but simply inviting our community to spend a day reflecting on what makes us great. I see it again as encouraging residents to go out, enjoy the fruits of our labours, use our parks, use our waterways, or just have a toast to Hunters Hill. And if the Save Hunters Hill Coalition want to have an event, that's fine as well. July 31 being the most recent of all of those battles that we fought to have our sense of place, to maintain our sense of place, seems to me the most appropriate date. And again, we shouldn't look backwards, we need to look forwards into our future. I also note that many of the submissions have mentioned Mookaboolra as an alternative. My view is, and I think somebody pointed it out, that to a certain extent, Mookaboolra has become a victim of its own success. It's 20,000 people. Now, we don't have that many people in our municipality, so it's bigger than Ben-Hur. It's a regional event. To me, Hunters Hill Day can be a smaller, more reflective day. Again, our sense of place, again, our bushland, our parks. And so while I support the idea of Hunters Hill Day and the significance of July 31 as the most recent date in our history's right to retain our sense of place, I'm conscious that because of it, we have an absolute responsibility as both citizens and as councillors to do everything we can to improve and move Hunters Hill forward into the future. Otherwise, what happened on July 31 will be in vain. And I think our community expects that of us. So I support the motion, I support the idea of it. I don't want it to be politicised. It's a day to celebrate our sense of place.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody wishing to speak against the motion? Councillor Cresswell.
It saddens me to speak against this motion because I have a great deal of respect for every speaker who spoke for it. and all the amazing work that they have done in our community over the years to protect it and to support it and to grow it. But I feel that this date is a divisive date. And by divisive, what I hear on the street from the many, many people that I've asked about it and who raise it at dinner parties or in the shops is it's all about us and them. And we got it a lot during the election, and living over Baronia Parkway, I get it often. And I don't think Huddersfield needs to find any more reasons to encourage a division of us and them. I hate to say it because the amalgamation fight was massive. And just because I wasn't at the meetings and I'm no longer on the Friends of list, I somehow slipped off it, it doesn't mean I'm not passionately against forced, undemocratic amalgamation. So that saddened me a little to hear you speak that way, Phil, because I think you undervalued a lot of people in our community who simply don't have the time and resources that you passionately do have. And that makes me feel divided from you in something we should be united on.
Councillor, could you keep your comments to the councillors?
Sorry.
It's in a situation debate, we're not debating it with the gallery.
Okay. So I, as a councillor, was very proud to be invited to become a councillor. I've loved every bit of my training, and everything that I do is in consideration of our place and our community. And I think everyone here knows I love a party. Any reason to get the community together, I am there. I don't think that celebrating Hunters Hill Day on the 31st of July will in any way bring our community together. I'm not saying that people shouldn't celebrate that day if they want to, but I don't think we as a council should formally recognise it above so many other significant days in our history that are in no way any less significant than this last battle. Even though someone did comment that this has been arguably the most significant in our history, I beg to differ. I think we would be a very different shape if some of that development at Woolwich and Kelly's Bush had gone ahead. So it is with deep sadness that I feel so divided on this. As I say, I respect you all for the work that you did to fight amalgamation. But I just think that the 31st of July as Hunters Hill Day is too divisive. Choose the 7th of February, because I do like a party, when the Hunters Hill Trust was established. Choose the 3rd of January, 1861, when Hunters Hill was established as a municipality. Choose any other day to celebrate all of that amazing history. But the biggest thing we need to choose is to look forward. The founding aldermen, Joubert and Generet, were ambitious people. They were bold, they were brave, they lobbied the state government, they rallied the residents. They formed what was it called, the 1870 Generet tree policy, which as a result of, we have the beautiful treescape we have today. They built roads, they lobbied for better access, they had 13 ferry wharves along the river. They built the Hunters Hill that we love and admire today, and they never got time to say, you know what, let's have a day to commemorate all the work we've done. I just think we need to be a little humble, and we need to prove to the state government first and foremost, and to the residents who, many of which quite frankly don't care, we need to prove to them that this is a magnificent suburb worth celebrating and worth preserving, and the 31st of July is not the day to do it. I feel very strongly, and it saddens me deeply that our council and some of our most respected residents have divided me on this.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody wishing to speak for the motion? Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd first of all like to follow up on the issue of the basis of the report. I think it has missed some recommendations that were agreed to by council, so the report itself is not as complete as it could be. However, having said that, my attention comes to what the intent was of this process. And the intent of the process was clearly to seek community views in relation to having the 31st of July recognised as a significant day and also be recognised as Hunters Hill Day. We've been through the process of consultation. We live in a democracy, and that's what was fought for so passionately on the 31st. And the community have, in a vast majority, have said that they're happy with the proposal. We live in a democracy, so we'll always get a percentage of the community that don't agree. But the majority rule in any healthy democracy. I don't see it as divisive. It is a day of celebration, and people can make of it what they want. But we've heard from former councillor Astridge a whole list of issues that this community have proudly fought over the years, but none, with the exception of the amalgamation process in 2005 or 3 that I fought, have the ultimate consequence of the demise of this community, demise of all its values. This was the defining event, and we can be political about it, or we can look at the reality of it. The reality is very clear that if that date didn't exist, we wouldn't exist. Not only as a council, I'm not talking about self-interest as being a councillor, but the values which this council represents, the values which this community have fought for many years, would have been lost. And sure, there could have been an alternative, maybe a different outcome for the margins of the municipality where we abut Ryde. But in reality, I think with this council moving forward in a very positive direction, those residents can only win from it. We've heard of a whole range of dates that are important, but they didn't decide the future of this community. The Trust just celebrated their 50th year. I was surprised to find only 2 councillors turned up to their Christmas party. It was such a significant event this year that I would have thought the council would have been fully behind the Trust in its celebrations. So let's not lose sight of the significance of the 31st. It is unique. It does represent the survival and the continuation of our values and the importance of our local area. So I think it's very fitting. We've done all the appropriate issues of going out to the community, getting their feedback. And I just don't understand Councillor Collins' position in relation to this. People of their own free will have provided responses, and we've got a healthy number of responses. And you'll always get for and against, but the vast majority or the overwhelming majority are for this proposition. So, Mr. Mayor, I believe it is appropriate and important that we respect the democratic process we've just been through, and that we support the motion which Councillor Sanderson has put before Council.
Thank you. Anybody wishing to speak against the motion? Anybody wishing to speak for the motion? Has everybody had an opportunity to speak?
Speak for the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Miles.
I think it's a shame that turned nasty for no reason. That was unfortunate, and I think that all the other speakers had spoken quite well and had demonstrated what Hunters Hill Day should be about, which is the coming together of this community, as Councillor Crassoy has said. So it's a bit disappointing when someone gets up and attacks councillors who are just here serving their community, like I think everyone in this room is attempting to do. I'd never been opposed to this proposal. The date may be divisive to some. I think it's just an opportunity for councillors to get out there and get amongst the community, for community organisations to maybe host open days or whatever. I found it unfortunate that the debate went that way, because I had never spoken against this proposal, and I think for some councillors that felt very political. For people that get accused of being political, that was an unfortunate way to conduct yourself in this chamber, and it showed a disrespect to this chamber. So I'm supportive of the proposition in front of us. I think it's an appropriate thing to do. It's an appropriate day to recognise. I'll be out there in the community. I hope that we can, as I've said at previous council meetings when we've spoken about this, I hope that we hold roadshows and other bits and pieces that council can go out there and talk in the community about the good work that we do. So, yeah, I'm supportive of the proposal, but again, I'm disappointed at the conduct of one person in particular.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody wishing to speak against? For? Are we all done? I'd like to say that this date's important to me for a particular reason. And I think that when we got to the end of it in May, as we were getting towards the last 6 months of the campaign, and I realised that if we lost this, then the councillors who would make decisions about what happens in Huddersfield, very few of them would live in Huddersfield. And I think Huddersfield has quite a strong heritage in terms of its buildings and its environment and its rock faces and its walls. And I think it would have been very difficult for enough councillors who didn't live in the area to have a good appreciation for that. I'm sure the staff would have helped them and pointed to the importance of some of those things, but I'm not sure they would have been important to councillors who lived in a different area. So there were lots of things said during the campaign. We did run a number of tests on it to see if we were heading down the right track. Statistics is a very hard thing, and it's, of course, the people who complain are often the ones that are against something, so it's a hard thing to measure. But we had 2 public meetings, we ran a survey, we also had the government run their own survey. They sent the delegate out here to the sailing club to see what we thought. And 80% of people, or 4 out of 5 people that spoke in those 2 sessions, spoke against it. Now, that's not Huddersfield Council, that's not us running our own campaign, that's not the councillors who were keen not to amalgamate ring around, that's the government's delegate doing it themselves. And the delegate said, I'm here to listen, and 4 out of 5 people who spoke to the delegate said no. And that was very strong to me that we were headed down the right track. So I have one more request, Councillor Sanderson. I'd like you to incorporate the third point of your motion into your motion, if you'd consider that.
If it's procedure don't go with you,
I'd like to suggest you do that and we get it over and done with. So what we would be voting on, and has anybody got any objection to that? We're voting on the 3 points raised and not holding over the third point till later. You happy with that? Second, happy with that?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
I think this moment will pass, and I think any bad blood will pass. I know a couple of gentlemen in this room have got pretty thick skins and they get over things, and I'm sure we will get over this bad blood this evening. So I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you very much.
Five two, Bedlam Bay.
Next item on our agenda tonight is 5.2. And we have Speaker Ms. Paxton. Welcome. Thanks for your patience.
Wasn't that fun?
We're through the first 2 items on the agenda.
I'll be really, really quick with that.
I'll put some tack into us.
Probably not in my nature, really. But, so I just wanted to speak about Bedlam at the Bay.
give you a quick summary of what happened this year and to a potential another event next year. So as the Happy Hens, we hosted mental health awareness event, which we called Bedlam at the Bay, on Sunday the 21st of October at Bedlam Bay Oval in the old Gladesville Hospital. This was in partnership with Way Ahead Mental Health Association and Ryde and Hunters Hill Councils. We had a core group of 9 of us on the steering committee, began planning in December 2017. Hundreds of volunteer hours were spent organising this fun event with an important message. It's okay to talk about mental health. The event was all-inclusive, from toddlers to seniors, and was accessible to all. The Happy Hens provided music, art, craft, yoga, sports rides, a naturopath, DIY woodwork, food stalls, transport, plus more, free of charge to the community by way of financial grants and in-kind assistance from our partners, plus sponsorship from local businesses. Huge thanks goes to local businesses, RDC Accountants, Strata Transport, Yoga House, URM, Benelong Music, Home Care Heroes, Vision Personal Training and Gladesville Healthcare for believing in us. On the day, with 1,500 attendees, over 80 amazing volunteers, 11 mental health providers ready to talk, 8 bands and artists including Hunters Hill High School, Riverside Girls High and local choir favourites, the Mamas and the Mamas, 5 food stalls, 4 professional artists running free workshops all day, and 3 neurotic hens. The event was a success, with the message of destigmatising mental health reaching all in a fun and unobtrusive way. I'm here tonight to ask Council firstly if they would consider supporting this event again if we were to hold it on Sunday the 27th of October 2019. And if so, could we respectfully request a Bedlam Bay Oval fee waiver, which was quoted to us at around $1,500 plus a $2,000 deposit. Up front, this is a massive outlay for a not-for-profit group. Also important is in-kind support from Hunters Hill Council. Knowing that Council are working with us from the beginning is very important to us with event planning. To conclude, I'd like to say a huge thank you to Council staff member Kate Cootie, who spent hours of her own time on this event, along with assisting us through Council. Without her, the day would not have happened. Also, a huge thanks to Hunters Hill councillors and Mayor Bennett for doing the traditional welcome on the day. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Questions? Councillor Craston.
More a comment. I came along on the day, and I know at least one other councillor went along as well. It was just a really beautiful day. You lucked it with the weather. Gosh, you lot worked hard. What I loved about it was that you managed to get so many local community groups passionate about and interested in supporting your vision, and your vision was so bright, and so thank you for delivering that to us. I will ask later about whether we can send a formal letter to Kate Cuddy to thank her for everything she did, because I know you've said it often. You've asked about potential fee waiver and support from council. Anything else you're kind of looking for there by way of?
I suppose early support in the application process was lengthy for us, and it perhaps took away from advertising, marketing, getting out in the community and actually talking about this event and building it to what it could be. So yeah, we found that a lot of hours was spent in section 68 or the 26-page form that we had to fill out. So the approval we got from council was only 48 hours before the event, and I think that had a lot to do with the fact that this sort of event has perhaps not happened that often before. I don't know, but I think perhaps many of those hours would be, it just wouldn't happen next time around if there was to be one.
So, and also just to follow on, so none of you are skilled in that kind of legal form documentation management, so that could be something we as a council can learn in supporting community organisations in that way. Have you collected any feedback from those organisations, from attendees? Did you do a follow-up survey?
We did. So Way Ahead, our partners who actually invited the mental health providers to come along, put out feedback forms, and we had all positive feedback. They said they look forward to it again. we had comments from random residents, west, north, south, east, saying no other council puts this on, and they would be travelling, and how do we get to this council area to actually attend this event? So all completely positive. We actually were surprised there was no negative comments. So good.
And
Other question, Councillor Cresswell?
thank you. I know Ryde Council gave you substantial sponsorship.
Mm-hmm.
Did they also give you that organisational support that Kate Cuddy provided as well? Like, did you get extra support from other organisations?
Yeah. So Kate's counterpart in Ryde Council also put it out through his networks. So yeah, we've
a real council
really
collaboration.
well supported there financially. And, in contacts.
Councillor Miles.
Did you find, I suppose you didn't have to apply, but did you find council a bit less bureaucratic to deal with at Ryde, or?
Yeah, I guess they've had this process before. I could be wrong, I don't know, but I just, they had certain steps that were very easy to follow. Kate's counterpart at Ryde was quick to assist. The grant process starts, I think they close in February and it's decided by May. So we knew by May this year, how much we had from Ryde and what we needed to build on. So it was quite easy.
Councillors, any further questions? I'd like to thank you for running it. I think we've got a growing mental health problem in our communities. It comes from a number of different areas, but I think we've got increasing isolation in our communities, which comes from all sorts of things, from computerisation to internet shopping to shopping malls rather than strip shopping where people go to know the owners. And I think it's coming on us very quickly. We do have a major problem, and I compliment you on your work in that area also. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Could we add to the recommendation? Thanks.
Just one moment. Councillor Cresswell?
I'd like to move the motion with a couple of additions, if I may.
Yes, second.
I'll wait.
We'll wait.
I think I probably intend to second.
That the report be received and noted, that council send congratulatory and formal thank you letters to Kate Cuddy, to Strider, and to the Happy Hands. And next point, that council early consider waiving the fees on Bedlam Bay to support the hens in their ambitions for next year, in their, what's the word?
We can do that now.
That council waives the fees for next year's event.
Yeah.
Council.
Yeah. If we can, that's my preference. For the next event.
Okay, captured. Seconded. Councillor Miles. Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I already addressed most of my comments in congratulating you for your work. Mental health, that is something that's quite close to my family. It's close to a lot of people I know. But it's rare that the path is lit, and it's a dark and murky path. So to be a wonderful day with ice cream, mandalas, singing, as well as excellent services available for casual conversations in an unintimidating environment, with many doors open, I really congratulate you for the work that you've done. I think that as a council, we should be incredibly proud that Kate Cuddy really took this event, something that really I don't think has happened in New South Wales before. It's like the Food and Wine Festival at brain health, as I've said before. And I'm proud that Kate Cuddy had the vision to see the importance of it and to really support you the way that she did. And I think that we as a council need to continue to do more in this place that we want to call place, to create a greater sense of inclusion and wellness. So I commend the report with those additions, and I thank the Happy Hands from.
I'm guessing nobody wishes to speak against it. Does anybody wish to any amendments?
Oh, not amendments.
Would I speak against it?
No, of course not.
Speak for it.
Yes.
Please.
Just briefly, if I can. I did go down there with my son. I saw Councillor Crassoy down there. I was absolutely blown away by how many people were there and how big it was. It is in quite a secluded area, so it wasn't a case of people just walking past and seeing it. Whatever you did, it was amazing. You should really be proud of what you've done. If 1,500 people turn up the first year, well, I think next year will be quite a big one. Now, I think you did ask for some funding last year. I would certainly hope that you do your numbers together and come back and ask for some more. I think I'd be quite inclined to support any such request.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else wishing to speak for? Put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Kelvin.
very much.
We moved 8.1 forward too, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
And we have a speaker, Mr. Malley. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hello, Councillor. Thank you. It's been an interesting night listening to the mix of issues you guys deal with.
You should run.
Yes, well, I think I'm better in the gallery, I think. Look, I guess the stream of issues that came through in the conversations tonight were about the residents' views, about the process and about data. And I guess, to be fair, in all of this, that's pretty well the things I thought about before I even went forward with this request. I can recall coming to the chambers having no idea how to go about it, but to try and go about it in the most appropriate and transparent way. So I came to the council, they explained the process that I needed to follow, and I did follow that. And in different dispatches at different events, I think I bumped into some councillors. I consciously didn't go around trying to push this. I simply wanted to do it an open and reasonable way. So once I was told that there would be letters going out, I did, to your point about running, which I won't, I did, I guess, what some of you guys do periodically, and that's knock on doors. And I did that primarily because I wanted to be really open with the people that I live near. And I think I've almost covered every person that was written to by virtue of their response. And I think on 62 occasions, I physically walked people over to where you saw the land and explained to them what I was trying to do. I also showed them very clearly that the access to the foreshore was unchanged by this decision. And I explained the reasons that brought me forward to do it. And so what I wanted to do tonight was to simply say that in making your decisions, and it's come up a few times tonight, it's important that you're assured from my perspective that I've been as open and as fair and as reasonable as I possibly could. I think we got ultimately 75 signatures, which represented about 67 households that went beyond who were written to. I was surprised actually that there were a lot of people that knew about this quirky block, and half the time finished the story I began telling them. And on not one occasion did I say to them, "Can you please sign this?" I went through the whole process and then gently said at the end, I'm looking to ensure that if you're comfortable with that, if you'd like to support it, that would be great. If you don't, I respect that. I think one person said, "I won't object to it, but I don't wish to sign it." That was fine. So I simply wanted to put that on the table and say, that's what's resulted in the paper I saw. I don't know for some of you historians here whether it's a first that there's never been an objection. Mr. Krepis, I think there was one particular person that supported
Not
that. No, I know, but that supported. No, that's true. But I mean, in terms of the residents, and there was one person that supported it, who I think in the past hasn't. So thank you for your arms going up, but I'm done. So.
All right, thank you very much. Councillors, questions? Councillor Williams.
I said up front and on the site inspection that I required a survey plan so that I could see exactly where we were selling this land. Did council acquire one? Have you produced one?
I think there actually is one at the council, and when I got it, and at your suggestion, we sort of coloured the section and explained it, as well as the diagram that was sent to the residents actually was a larger version of the same survey. The actual survey, if you look at all the, and I'm not a surveyor clearly, at all the lines and crosses and what it looks like, it's quite complex. Yes, so I did colour that and did use that as part of my discussion, along with the letter that they received. So even those that hadn't received the letter, I showed them a copy of the letter as well.
Can I ask a question through you, Mr. Mayor, to the General Manager? Do we have a surveyed plan of this site that is attached to the contract if we go forward?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we do have a survey plan that's formed the basis of preliminary evaluations that are being conducted.
So in any contract there'll be a hard line on the drawing that's been surveyed?
Yes, we'd be clear, Councillor.
Thank you.
All right. Are there any further questions? Councillor, is that something that we should add to this recommendation, perhaps?
I would be more comfortable if there's a very clear document that shows exactly what the sale includes, and I would imagine that would be in place anyway. However, I have asked for it before and haven't received a copy of it. So.
Okay, so you'd like to see it?
I'd like council to make sure that it has that document and that the boundaries align clearly with what we've seen and what's been shown to the residents.
Okay.
So point 2 talks about it coming back as a further report. We could have it in that.
Yeah, could come back at that. So, okay, thank you very much. Please have a seat.
Okay. Thank you.
Moved Councillor Collins and seconded Councillor Miles.
I'd like to move an amendment if I may.
Councillor Williams.
I'd like to add a third point there, and I hope the applicant sees this as valuable. Not a fourth point, but a third point, that council require of the purchaser to provide signage to council's satisfaction that clearly shows community access is available to the unsold or whatever the
public land,
the remaining public land.
Is it called a reserve down there?
It's a road reserve, I think.
Road reserve.
Yeah. But I think it's important that we reassure the community and make it clear that that is still public, regardless of what we might have sold off. And you still have access to their original area.
I'll accept that into my. Oh, it's your motion.
Councillor.
It counts job of council. It's not the job of a resident.
Yeah, I would have thought that would. This is just entering negotiations, isn't it? This isn't the final. Yeah, I would have thought that would come later on, if at all. But, so I don't really, accept that as it.
All right, so we've got an amendment to the motion on the table. Councillor Williams has moved that amendment. Councillor Sanderson seconded the the amendment to the motion. Councillor Williams, would you like to speak to it?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I don't think it's a big impost. I don't think the council hasn't initiated this request. Council has responded appropriately to that. I think as part of any contractual arrangement, we need to be upfront on what our expectations are. And I think it needs to be, if council is of the mind to agree to delineation of the community asset, then that needs to be upfront. And I don't see why council should be the one that has to bear the cost, as would council not have to bear the legal costs. I would imagine this would be all borne by the proponent and the purchaser. So I think the amendment is more than reasonable and appropriate.
Anybody wishing to speak against the amendment? Councillor Cresswell.
Mr. Mayor, I'm new. I don't know. I can't recall how long that piece of land has been the shape it is. I'm fairly certain there's no signage down there at the moment, and I don't see why the sale of that piece of land between the owner and council changes anything. I do see that putting up another sign on that little parcel of land is another ugly sign that we just don't need to have in Hunters Hill. I don't think a sign's necessary at all, but if we think it's necessary, I think council should pay to have it put up.
Who wishes to speak for? Against? Councillor Williams, back to you.
Mr. Mayor, I think the community needs to be aware of where its public spaces are. It doesn't have to be intrusive. It can be a plaque. We've done it previously where public lands is been altered as a result of sales, and I think it's incumbent on council. I don't care if it's the applicant or council, but we need to make it clear to the public that this has not changed community access. Community still retains its right to enter the property, still retains its right to access the area behind the area that we're selling. So I just see it as a reasonable and a fair information process for our community, so there's no uncertainty or no misunderstanding as to the area that we've retained and the public's right to access that area. Very keen to make sure the community is informed and has its rights clearly stated.
You should have said this before you spoke, excuse me, but I'm in favour of this. I think it is important that we clearly know what is public land. And I can see the applicant nodding down the back there, so perhaps he understands the amendment as well. Is that correct? Yeah. Right, so I'll put the motion. Those in favour of the amendment, excuse me. Thank you, councillor. The amendment, those in favour of the amendment? Against? That's lost. So we're back to the original motion. So do we need any further discussion on the original motion?
Just a point of clarification. So once the negotiations have taken place, I assume it's going to come back to council for approval of the sale.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that's the intention, councillor.
Okay.
And the amount, and the value, and the values discussed. I think that's, yes, anyway, we'll come back to that. Any further discussion on this? So we're dealing with items 1 and 2 in the motion. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. That's unanimous. All right, thank you very much.
I suspect I'm not allowed to ask from the gallery, but can I just ask what the process is from now?
We'll give you, if you can give Mr. Cripps a call tomorrow, he'll run it through it. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
I think we've gone to 8.3. Mr. Sharp, Dr. Sharp, excuse me, Doctor.
I think you're going to be here very late tonight. Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Mayor and councillors. I had looked back through the minutes of the meeting on 25th of June to see that the property committee is to have 3 councillors and 3 community members. So presumably these people are to advise council on actions in the future. But in order for council to receive balanced advice, it's surely necessary for the community members to represent the community, which could not be the case with the current proposal, where all three of the members come from the property industry, and you haven't been given a choice tonight. You've simply been presented with three people. In particular, there has to be some voice on this committee reflecting community's concerns about heritage, about the environment, about community needs, not just representatives of business. I understand there were other applicants, and one I know of put her application in slightly late, but I think she would be extremely highly qualified for this position. I also understand that there are no terms of reference for the committee, no definition of its decision-making ability, and no requirements for any ongoing consultation with the community. So until these matters are agreed, I think, and I urge you to defer any decision on this matter. I think to have a committee set up with no terms of reference is an absurdity, because in effect you're asking the committee to set its own terms of reference. And this committee is being empowered by council to give advice. Surely it has to be told what the limits are of the sort of advice it's going to give. So again, I urge you to defer this matter.
Thank you, Dr. Sharp. Questions, just one moment please, Doctor.
Yes.
Councillor Miles.
More a clarification than a question. There was a property committee last council term. The terms of reference, as I understand it, have not changed.
Well,
from the
how do we
property,
know that?
because it's the reformation of the property committee.
No, it has a different name.
It was always called the property committee. I was on the property advisory committee last term with Richard Quinn and
That's a different name.
the property committee.
Property Advisory Committee.
All right, let's not have a debate.
Anyway,
Let's not have a debate.
there are terms of reference. It's not
I couldn't
in the
find-
ether.
I sought terms of reference. I looked on the internet today. I asked the mayor. I couldn't find any terms of reference.
We can provide you some.
All right. Councillor McLaughlin.
Sorry, Dr. Sharp, you said that there'd been some other applications. I might just get some clarification for you, Mr. Mayor. Were other applications received?
Yep, three, Mr. Mayor. I understand the process was that an advertisement was placed in the paper. This is going back some months. Following that advertisement, then there were 5 applications received that we have found. Of those 5, we then sent a application form to the 5, inviting those 5 people that submitted an expression of interest to complete an application form by a certain date, by the 14th of September. 3 of the 5 submitted an application form, and on that application form, individuals are asked to provide details of their qualifications, any occupational licences, experience, and then availability. The issue was raised that there were potentially 2 other people that perhaps had expressed interest in participating. We couldn't find records of one of those individuals that was suggested to have put in an expression of interest. The other person didn't submit the application form following the expression of interest. So we've only received 3 applications. Complete applications.
All right. Are there any further questions of Dr. Sharp? Thank you very much. Oh, sorry.
No, I wish to make
Thank you,
a
Dr.
motion.
Sharp.
I actually had a question, Dr. Sharp. Sorry, I thought you
Councillor
were-
Crasso has a question.
As we have you, do you think that a committee that reviews our opportunities for development and income generating around the suburb, looking at our existing assets and potential future assets, do you think that a committee that does that is a good idea as long as it has representation from the community on there?
Oh yes, I support the concept of I should have said that. I support the concept of such a committee, but if it's to advise what's good for the community, not just about it. And I haven't seen it as a reference, I don't know, but if that's part of its job, and that is actually written into the business paper here, that it's just, yeah, it's more than about money. It's about making the community a good place. And so surely it has to have representatives from, if they're called community representatives, they have to represent the community.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sharp.
Thank you.
Please have a seat. Councillor Williams.
I'd like to move a motion, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to receive and note the report. Item 2, I'd like to defer this matter for further invitation for a community representative, being community in the fullest sense, not just community with investment decision. I'd like to agree that the current 3 be appointed, pending a 4th community-focused person.
Just hold on just a moment till we're clear, please.
Advertise then appoint.
Was it a representative or representatives?
No, a representative, community representative. Being one of not financial basis or the corporate business person.
Is that correct?
Yeah. And then I agree with there'd be 3 councillors. So 3 for be incorporated. Actually 2, 3 and 4 be incorporated. So I think we can agree on those. And the 5th point is that a charter or terms of reference for this committee be brought back to council in early. Because I agree, I can't agree to a committee that I haven't got the terms of reference for. So the matter's been deferred for those reasons.
It was moved Councillor Williams, seconded Councillor Sanderson. Councillor Williams, would you like to speak to the...
Well, I can't put it any better than Dr. Sharp has, and it's something I raised previously, that we need to make it very clear that the community interest is served here, more than just financial and or development. We need to incorporate those views, and we have that in the local planning panels. We have technical experts and we have a community person that provides an independent view on other aspects that might not be planning or technical. So I believe it's important that we have this level of expertise, but I also find it essential that we have a community-based person that can speak on behalf of the community in terms of impact on heritage, terms of impact on access, other alternative uses for these properties in addition to generating income. Now that may be the thoughts of these people, but at the moment it just purely looks as a technically based group, and I think it needs to be balanced. And as I said, it would be strange to go forward with a committee without a terms of reference, because you've got no clear guidance as to what its charter is, what its boundaries are, its reporting processes. And I think from the committee's point of view, they would benefit from it as well. So I'm not delaying this unduly. I think there's some important elements that still need to be incorporated before we have a successful committee that can serve the community on this important issue.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Excuse me just a moment. Suggestion was we just check to make sure we got number 2 right in this. Is one community representative enough, do you think, Councillor Williams?
Yes, I think we need a voice from the community.
Is one though enough?
Yeah, from my perspective, yes.
All right. All right, now is that correct now? Have we got 2 correct? So the item number 2 in your paper, Councillor, is that part of this or not part of this?
I suggested that they also be included, 2, 3 and 4, because they're just procedural things. We've got 3 technical people. I'm quite happy to.
I think we're just missing the 2 out of the papers to carry across.
Yep.
The original 2. Is that right?
Yes. Let's not delay on the technical people, but we still need a community person.
Advise these people.
Yep.
Advise Wilson Wise, Max McFarlane, Damien Kelly, that they
Have been appointed.
have been appointed.
Yep.
Or will be appointed.
Yeah,
I guess we've got another step before we do it. Yeah, will be likely to be appointed.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that first medical is that first medical that's what's missing. That's right. Okay, that's right. That's what leaves away. That's right.
Do you imagine we'd go ahead with that appointment prior to the next meeting? Those 3 people, lock them in?
Yeah, I'd lock them in, but we still have 2 steps to go.
Yeah.
To actually call the meetings held.
Okay, could you just have a look over that and make sure you're happy with that, please?
I am, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. So, does anybody wish to speak against this?
Well, I have a question, but I think I want to speak against it as well.
You can ask a question.
I can ask a question, thank you. So I'm just to clarify, because the original motion was that we appoint 3 councillors and 3 community members. So Wilson Wise, Max McFarlane and Damien Kiley are 3 community members. They just happen to have a very narrow skill set between the 3 of them. So I just want to clarify through you, Mr. Mayor, probably to the GM, if we now seek a 4th community member, so then we have 3 councillors and 4 community members, so we're changing the original. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And but I do agree that the skill set of these three people is quite narrow. So I just wanted to ask, is that what we're doing now? We're having 4 community members?
3, Mr Mayor, in essence, yes.
Question, Councillor
No,
Cresswell?
I'd like to speak against it.
Are we, all right?
Do you want to
Against?
speak against it?
No, please go ahead, Councillor Cresswell, you can speak against it.
I just have a question. I agree about receiving and noting, and I agree that we defer the report, which was in there at some point. Oh, it's not in there anymore. Okay, that's gone. All right, no, that's fine. And the reason I would like to is because I know, not well, but I do know the other 2 community members who applied to the committee and who thought that their applications had been received and were none the wiser that their applications hadn't been received. So when I read the council minutes, the council paper, I messaged one of the people to say, just to clarify, and I didn't have the number of the other person because I don't know them well enough. But I think we should get to the bottom of why those 2, perhaps they misunderstood, perhaps it went astray, I don't know. But I do know that one of those community members was keen and would be excellent in the role. I think the other one will be too. They both have great credentials and they bring a diversity to this list. So then what you're ending up with is 5 candidates. And if we notify these 3 candidates that they've got the job, and the other 2 come along and you all look and you agree with me that they both have excellent credentials and should be on this committee, suddenly we have 5 community members. So
you're speaking against it, or
I
are
am
you
speaking
foreshadowing
against
a
it.
motion?
Oh, is that what I'm doing? I'm
Are you foreshadowing a
foreshadowing.
motion to defer this if it gets lost?
Thank you.
Is that possible?
You're so wise.
Not really.
Thank you. That's what I
Not
want
really,
to
I'm
do.
just trying to understand, so.
I would like to defer it till we get to the bottom
All
of
right.
those other 2.
All right, thank you, councillor. So, who would like to speak for the motion?
Mr Mayor, could I have a bit more clarification just to defer on what basis?
Sure.
And to achieve what?
Certainly. Okay, would you like to go through it again? Tell us why.
I will. The motion that you've put, Councillor Williams, is appointing these 3 community members to the committee. We just heard from the very wise Dr. Sharp that we should have another community representative on there. I think I know who he has in mind, and I think that that representative would be excellent on the committee. So there's a potential 4th.
But that's my motion.
I know that's your motion.
A 4th person.
But there is another community member who thought their application had been received, and they are also an excellent candidate. So
Well, that's
why
that
I'm
too.
suggesting a deferral is until we get to the bottom of what's happened to those 2 people, that I think if we just rush and appoint these 3, if the council's happy with 5 community members and 3 councillors on the committee, then that's a different thing, I guess, but that's why I'm suggesting a deferral.
Okay, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I'm happy to have 5, another community rep, that's good.
Well, I think councillor Crasso, are you suggesting we defer it until we get to the bottom of about these other 2 candidates, which you think one of them should be on this panel?
I think
until we understand why they're not on the panel. Is that what you're suggesting as a foreshadowed motion? All right. Who would like to speak for the motion as it is at the moment?
Can I ask a question?
Certainly.
Why, if we've currently got provision for 3 in our previous recommendation that we appoint 3, to appoint another 2, then we're going to have to increase it to 5 in any case. So why wouldn't we move a motion to have it up to 5 representatives? Because otherwise there's no valid reason to go back and seek further people, because there's 3 already appointed. So, not appointed, but proposed. So we need to allow the expansion, I would have thought, to 5 now, so that debate or discussion could take place.
Okay, well, I think, councillor, it's your motion.
Sorry?
It's your motion.
Yeah, but I'm talking about, increase it to 5.
Up to.
All right, so what would you like to change, please?
To advertise for a advertise for community representatives to participate in the property committee up to a maximum of 5. Advertise to seek up to 2 further committee.
2 additional members.
Up to.
Over and above the one we've already done.
Yeah.
I don't know if we need to advertise
Oh,
it.
so it's just a waste of money. There's 2 people
You have to
potentially out there.
advertise, you can't do that. There are rules.
Well, again, if we
I didn't. I didn't.
if we got an application from one but didn't get an application from the others, we've got to go back and advertise again.
I would have thought so.
We have to. All right, so Councillor Williams, is that clear? Is that what you want in this motion?
I do, Mr Mayor. I think that's fair enough.
All right, thank you. Councillor Sanderson, do you accept that amendment?
I'm happy to accept those amendments.
Second that. All right, who would like to speak against? Councillor Collins.
Can I just get clarification on what the change has been? Are we not forming the committee? I mean, are we deferring actually forming this committee or not?
No.
No.
So what, the only change is that we're potentially going to have 2 more members, is that right?
That's my understanding too. And clear terms of reference.
Yep, there's 2 issues.
I mean, isn't that just going to delay the forming of this committee?
It may.
Well, I mean, we agreed to form this in June. The object is to look at commercial opportunities. And, you know, this is the last meeting of the year. Commercial opportunities just fly by. We are wasting time. We are dragging our feet. Let's just form the committee. If you want to add more people later, that can be done. We've already got a charter from the old committee. Let's just get it moving. We can always add members later. And if it turns out that we do have a narrow skill set, then that's fine. I'm certainly open to having more, a wider, but don't let this delay this whole process. We need to get this done because we need to get some more money. It is a commercial, I believe it is a commercially focused committee. And these 3 people offer some, it looks like they could really offer some insight to council. And any recommendations made by the committee, only recommendations that will come to council, and then obviously everyone will be able to have a say there. So let's just not drag our feet.
Right, thank you. Anybody wishing to speak for the motion? Against the motion? Councillor Miles.
This committee is a continuation of a committee that has existed the past 5 years I've been on. There is a charter. The charter needs to be reviewed, I'm sure, like all the charters that are going undergoing review. I'm really confused about this membership situation where we're suggesting that because the 3 applicants, who I think are fantastic applicants, who are locals, aren't community representatives because they have knowledge of the property industry. What's that about? They all live in the area. They all went through the rigmarole of signing an expression of interest, of filling out the form correctly. Council agreed that we'd had 3 community representatives and 3 councillors, and now, when we try and get it formed, after 6 months of delay, we've found some reason to defer again. That is incredibly frustrating. As Councillor Collins said, we have a real issue with our property portfolio. We have an issue with our budget. This is one of the major ways to address it, and we just keep putting it off. It's not all about commercialisation. And of course, we're going to be conscious of the views of the community. You're going to have 3 councillors on the committee. We're not going to flog off large swathes of valuable lands that are for community benefit. That's not what the purpose of this committee is. It is to assess our property portfolio and see what is performing, underperforming, and what is performing well, and what that quantum of money that's sitting in dirt could be done in the community. That's what this committee is for. And every time we try and get close enough, it seems to be delayed again. Councillor Collins is right. We have a charter. We have members, 3, which we agreed to. They filled out the forms correctly. They did the expression of interest. We're here at the last meeting of the year. We're not meeting till January. Then we have to meet again to discuss this. And then it'll be another 2 months. And no property committee. So, do as you will, but I just say this is a very, very frustrating situation. When what was agreed to form this committee, and the 3 members that are now being they're being called not community members, even though they live in Hunters Hill, just because they don't belong to the right group of people who may not have filled their forms out correctly or whatever. I'm open to that. I'm open to them joining. If the council resolves that, that's fine. But for them not to be called community members because they have property industry knowledge, I mean, that's ridiculous. Patently ridiculous. Anyway.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody wishing to speak for the motion? Against the motion? For the motion? May I ask a question, Councillor Williams? Is there a chance we could proceed with this, but also and review the old terms of reference and see if they still apply? I think they do need to be refreshed. Maybe need to be refreshed. I'm not sure. I haven't looked at them. But could we proceed with this, with the exception of these 2 members, and go about looking for those 2 members while this is happening? Is that a possibility?
Yes, most certainly.
Would you consider any changes to this that might satisfy Councillor Miles, which would allow this to proceed while we're looking for these members?
As I said, Mr. Mayor, I'm not proposing to delay this process, but I do think the right governance needs to be put in place and the right balance needs to be on the committee. So my view is that we could accept those 3. I'm not saying they're not local residents. I'm saying they have a particular skill set that is very narrow, and I would hope on the property committee we have other skill sets that can inform us. So yes, I'm happy to tick off those issues, provided we go ahead and seek other skill sets to be on the committee. I'm also very keen to make sure that I'm aware. I wasn't on the last council, so I haven't seen the terms of reference. And it's regrettable it's taken 6 months to come back to council. I would have hoped it would be back to council a couple of months after it was originally agreed on. That is not my fault, but I think we need to get it right. And we've done some work so far to get there. I think we need to do 2 things to get it over the line, finally, which is 1, ensure that there's another skill set on the table. 2, that we are clear on what the charter is, because that is the governance arrangement around it. I think we need to nominate who the councillors are going to be as well.
We do need to do that.
And I'm happy to be on that.
That's another issue we need to do.
So it can't start without that. So
we talked about 3 councillors, but they were on the proposals I think came up in the original one. So we need to get that down too. All right. Do you want to add that to this?
Well, I think if we're going to meet the timeline that Councillor Miles is talking about, then why not try and clarify that tonight? And as I say, I'm happy to nominate for one of the 3.
I'd like to nominate 2. Just because it was going to happen.
Okay, so we need to clarify that. So we need to, so just, can I get a bit of a straw poll here? Who would like to be on this committee? Okay. So I think Councillor Miles, Councillor Crassoy, Councillor Collins, Councillor Williams, Councillor Bennett. We have plenty of applicants.
Well, the mayor is an ex officio member of all committees.
That's right. That's true. That's true. How would you like to resolve this, councillors? So we're looking for 3 plus an ex officio member. I intend attending the meetings.
Well, it makes sense that Councillor Miles remain on it. He's been on it in the past and he's driven it.
I think so, yeah, absolutely. Councillor Collins was keen to do it, and I think his financial skills could be quite useful on a committee like that. Councillor Williams, a lot of experience over many years. So Councillor Williams, obviously a very good member, and I know your enthusiasm makes you a good member too, but how do we resolve it? How would you like to resolve this, Councillor?
I actually think, sorry, Mr. Mayor, I actually think Councillor Crassoy would be a fantastic member for the group. I think, you know, yeah, I would definitely support her, and not for her enthusiasm, but yeah, I think she brings a lot to these things. So yeah, I think that was a little.
How would you like to do it, Councillor? Would you like to do it by a show of hands, or?
I will move that myself, Councillor Collins and Councillor Crassoy and the Mayor as ex officio member be nominated.
I second that.
I think, I'm not necessarily sure that's the best way to resolve this, so I'm happy to take some advice. What do you think the best way to resolve this is? We can do it with a show of hands. I'm sure that works. Yep. Does work. You can do it with a secret ballot.
Well, apart from Councillor Miles, because credentials stand, maybe we can talk for a minute and a half each on why we think we could be on the committee or so.
We can't actually, because we've got 5 minutes until the council meeting closes.
All right.
Well, it's the mayor's call at the end of the day.
It is the mayor's.
All right, well, look, it's your motion on the table, Councillor Williams, isn't it?
That's
so
right.
I think we have to resolve this motion before we go to anything else, and then we can talk about that. Do you want the names of the councillors in this motion?
I think it expedites it, yes. Otherwise, we have to go through another process.
All right. And how would you like to resolve this, councillors? Would you like to do it with a show of hands? Would you like to do a secret ballot?
I support the way that Councillor Miles suggested. We have a motion to for Councillor Miles, myself, and Councillor Crassoy to form the committee. And if we do that by a vote, I think that would resolve the situation.
We need to resolve this first, I think.
That would be a new motion.
Sub-motion, something. Oh.
Supplementary.
You move an amendment.
Supplementary, an amendment. Can you do that?
No, I think we just deal with the substantive motion and then the next.
Can we foreshadow?
You can foreshadow all sorts of things.
Clarify. Show of hands.
Show of hands would sort it out quickly. But I would like you to decide how you'd like to resolve it.
Show of hands is
Show of hands
fine.
then.
All right. So we've got a motion on the table, and this is the motion on the table, and part of that motion is the names of the councillors. And I think we are able to, Councillor Sanderson, were you able to resolve that with a show of hands?
Motion or members?
The members, to go into the motion.
Well,
I'm asking you for a process.
Well, I guess what we do is we each have three votes and do this vote.
How would that work?
Like we do for Deputy Mayor.
Right, well.
What was that?
That went well.
All right, well, alternatively, we could just add an extra member to it.
I think that's getting pretty big. Yeah.
Look, I actually think you make a good point. If we're all that passionate about it, I think the four of us bring a diversity of points of view to the committee, and certainly from my point of view, until we get some other community representation on this list, I think as a resident who cares a lot about our place and historical elements, I really strongly like to be in there. And if it means adding an extra member to the committee this year, then we can always vote to take one off later if we need to get this done.
If I may, the problem I see with that is that we're going to have 4, 5, potentially 5 community members. You've indicated, Mr. Mayor, that 5 community members. Yeah, you've indicated that you'll be ex officio to accommodate 3 others. And now we've got a committee of 9. You know, it's getting a little bit big.
10.
10. Yeah, 10. So, I mean, I think the original motion we had, which was 3 and 3, is great. I think we can add another couple of community members, but this, of course, everything that comes from this committee comes to council. This is not, you know, this is about a committee that will work well together, and I think that the makeup being Councillor Miles has obviously driven this and brought this to council, and I think as part from her enthusiasm, I think Councillor Crasso will bring a lot to this, especially in the you know, and we're talking about bringing you know, looking at community assets and community value. I think that's a great skill set of Councillor Crasso, and obviously I've got financial skills there that I think would be of value. So I think we should, rather than just expand this committee to keep everyone happy, let's find out who is the best fit. Let's get it done, and let's not just turn this into a big monster that no one ever wants to deal with.
All right. Would you be happy for me to do a show of hands for each of the members? Councillors, are you happy with that?
No.
So, Councillor Miles has been on the committee before and has driven this motion. So, those in favour of Councillor Miles being on this committee? Thank you. Councillor Collins was one of Councillor Miles' suggestions at the very beginning, so those who would be happy to see Councillor Collins on the committee. Right, so that's 5. Councillor Williams, those who would be happy to see Councillor Williams on the committee. Only 3. And those who would be happy to see Councillor Crasso on the committee. I'd be happy to see Councillor Crasso on the committee. So, 4.
You can use the mayor.
So what does that leave us? It leaves us with 6 votes for Councillor Miles, 5 for Councillor Collins, 3 for Councillor Williams, and 4 for Councillor Crasso. So I put it to you that we've got 3 members, Councillor Crasso, Councillor Miles and Councillor Collins. I have to ask you, are you accepting of that?
I do.
I do. I do. All right, well, let's put those names. Let's put those names into. Now, this gets difficult, Councillor Williams. If we put this into your motion, are you willing to put that into your motion and put that motion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, there's a democratic process.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. I appreciate that. Any further discussion on this? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Are we against or for?
We will have to extend the time we have for this meeting. We're running out of time. Keep to 11 o'clock. Move Councillor Williams, second Councillor Miles. Everybody in favour? That's carried. Thank you. Back to 2.1.
We're at 2.1.
There's a recommendation.
Move Councillor Williams, second Councillor Miles. All in favour?
Aye.
That's carried. I think this is a very important motion. We need to look at this, talk about this another time. I think 4.1 is the next one, our development applications. Move Councillor Williams, second Councillor McLaughlin. Any comments? Put the motion, those in favour? Against? Councillor Collins.
No, we did 4.1. They're the
4.2, development application. Councillor Miles, Councillor McLaughlin.
he's out of the
Williams.
I'm happy to.
Still got a quorum.
Yep. Williams and McLaughlin. Moved and seconded. Councillor Miles is out of the chamber. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? That's carried. Has he left because of a conflict of interest or?
No, he was saying good night to us.
I see. 4.3 is a report on legal matters. Move Councillor McLaughlin, second Councillor Sanderson. Any discussion? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's carried.
4.5 on page 64,
4.5 is the next. We need to do it. The alley peer review and health check. Very important issue. Moved Councillor McLaughlin, seconded Councillor Craswell.
I think it was moved by Councillor.
Any further discussion?
I was scratching my head. Go team.
I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you very much.
6.1.
6.1 is the next one.
133.
Huddersfield Council's successful defence of an appeal for the development application on 2 Passy Avenue.
Move the
Councillor Williams. Second Councillor McLaughlin. Any discussion on that? Any other comments you'd like to make?
Sorry, can I just make a quick comment on
Yes, please.
this? I just wanted to thank Council for pursuing this. And I just wanted to note that this judgment highlights the importance that the role of Council's Conservation Advisory Panel plays in these kinds of issues and assessing the heritage of Hunters Hill. In this case, the Conservation Advisory Panel held a very strong view that this development was wholly inappropriate for our suburb. And on the 2 occasions that this development came to CAP, we were very, very strong in not supporting it. So together, and it just goes to show that CAP isn't just a box-ticking exercise for developers. So the combination of CAP, the combination of Council's Heritage Advisor, Greg Patch, and the great work that he does, and Council's Development Control Unit has really got a great result for Hunters Hill. So it's absolutely important that CAP continues to maintain vigilance on these issues.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion, councillors? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. 8.2 is the Civil Risk Mutual Service Providers Review.
6.2.
Right, I missed one. Sorry. 154. 6.2, sorry. Important on the garage sale for Move Councillor Craswell, seconded Councillor Williams. Discussion.
I'm going to be very quick because I know it's
Please
late,
do.
but it's in here, so now's the time to comment. I participated in this garage sale trail,
Well done.
and I appreciate, Mr Mayor, that the importance of our recycling, but I must say that reuse is where it all starts. Less consumption and reuse, and I commend the reporting officer on the amazing work that they did and the initiatives that council took to encourage more residents to participate.
and it was a very successful day. There was a great sense of community, and I know several residents whose children, my daughter is one of them, particularly raised $600 towards a trip to Nepal next week. So, and a lot of other residents did fundraising as well. If you look at the report, so much was saved around Australia, and I think this is actually where waste prevention starts. So thank you, Council, for supporting this movement.
Thank you. Something we need more of.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. So we're up to 8.2, the City West Mutual.
Move the recommendation.
Moved Councillor Williams, seconded Councillor Collins. Any discussion? I'll put the recommendation. Those in favour? Against? Sorry, one more time. Good start.
Favour, sorry.
Everyone in favour? Thank you. 8.3, property. No, we've done that one. Delegation. 8.4, delegate. We won't go through it again. Delegation to Mayor and General Manager during the Christmas New Year period. Moved Councillor Miles, seconded Councillor Williams. Is there any discussion on this? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. 9.1, minutes of advisory, Access Advisory Committee. Councillor Sanderson.
Could I just make a very small amendment to it?
Yes.
The part of the recommendation is to change the name of the committee. Unfortunately, what's happened in the process left the term advisory out of the new committee name. I think that should be included. So that point 2, instead of being Access and Inclusion Committee, should be Access and Inclusion Advisory Committee, because it remains an advisory committee of council. But I do commend that change that Kate Cuddy has brought in, and was eventually accepted by all members of the Access Advisory Committee, now to be the Access and Inclusion Advisory Committee.
Thank you. So that was moved Councillor Sanderson, seconded Councillor Craslow. Everybody in favour? Against? That's carried. 9.2, Children's Services Committee. Moved Councillor Williams, seconded Councillor Collins. Everybody in favour? Against? That's carried. 9.3, I understand we're withdrawing that from this evening. We'll bring that back to another meeting. Everybody in favour of withdrawing that? Councillor Williams, Councillor Crassoy. Put the motion. It's carried. Thank you. 9.4, floodplain risk management. Councillor Williams, Councillor Crassoy. Any discussion on that?
It's self-explanatory. It's had a first meeting and we'll be proceeding in the new year.
All right, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. 9.5 is the Public Art Committee. Moved Councillor McLaughlin, seconded Councillor Crassoy.
So there's just an amendment in the minutes. It talks about declarations of interest. The Mayor called for declarations of interest without response. I don't think you were there.
So is that the chair?
I think it would be the, well, I was the chair, but I wasn't present, so.
Chair. All right, thanks for pointing that out, Sarah. And that will correct that at the next meeting of that committee, I guess. All right, sorry, who moved the motion? Moved.
I did.
Councillor McLaughlin, seconded Councillor Crasser. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you. 9.6, the Seniors Advisory Committee. Moved Councillor Crasser, seconded Councillor Miles. I'll put the motion. All in favour? Thank you. 9.7 is report on councillor briefings held on the 12th of November. Moved Councillor Miles, seconded Councillor McLaughlin. Can I put the motion? All in favour? It's carried. Thank you. One objector? Yes. Objection, Councillor Williams. Thank you. So 12. Yes. 12.1 is the International Season Town Centre Conference. I would love to have you take us completely through this, but it's fascinating. I like the way it's presented too. So, move Councillor Moved Councillor Crasso, seconded Councillor Williams. Perhaps we could talk about this at one of the briefings in the future, please.
I'd love to.
That'd be great. Everybody in favour? Against? That's carried. And I think we need to move into committee as a whole. Moved Councillor Miles, seconded Councillor Williams. Ring the bells. Councillors, that motion has been dealt with. I think, do we need to say what the motion was? No? Or, all right.
To read out what the recommendation.
Yes, I think we need to read it out.
The recommendation as resolved is that council adopt the revised structure as set out in the report.
And pass a vote of thanks to the General Manager.
And the first. And the other issue.
All right, councillors, is there any further business?
The first issue, Mr. Mayor.
And the tender.
Oh, okay. Yeah, please.
In relation to the tender, the recommendation is that council accept the tender from Nesrock. 2, that council select Boral Proprietary Limited as the rank 1 contractor and Downer EDI as the rank 2 contractor for council road surfacing works. 3, that council select Burnapave Proprietary Limited as the rank 1 contractor, State Asphalt Services as the rank 2 contractor, and State Line Asphalt Proprietary Limited as rank 3 for heavy patching works. And 4, that council delegate the General Manager to execute contracts in this regard on behalf of council so that the contractors can be engaged.
Thank you, General Manager. So, is there any further business tonight? Are there any questions without notice? I declare the meeting closed at 11:50. Thank you, councillors.